The clerk sighs. Going through these tapes is a bore. She knows it's important. Her supervisor had told her the day she started that she'd be preserving history, creating an important archive of information for future generations. What they had, of course, failed to mention was that preserving history involves a whole lot of tedious filing. Still, that's the clerk's job description, and every time-consuming thing she can do to kill a few extra minutes at work is a welcome distraction from the boredom. Even if some days the only distraction comes from boring old footage of the president's speeches. Well, the old president, at least, not the current one. The day has been mostly sorting through archival tapes, most of them from about 10 years before. The process is slow. Insert a tape into the player, try to figure out when and where it's from, cross-reference that with newspaper reports from the same time, and then slap a new official reference number on it. Rinse and repeat. But then she finds the tape. One that looks like any other, is made of all the same materials as regular cassette tapes. From the outset, it seems to just be another recording of the president giving a speech. She skips through it, forwarding to different parts, hearing the same old thing. Something about evil, something about strength, another mention of evil. It's only when she starts paying attention again to the grainy image of the president, lines of interference shooting across the screen, that she spots something. His eyes are missing. Horrified, the clerk frantically rewinds, certain that what she's just seen was a mistake, just something wrong with the tape. She's seeing things, surely. She rewinds to a few minutes earlier, and to her relief, the president still has both his eyes. Except, not for long. In seeing them roll out of his head, the clerk screams. For hours, she's inconsolable, but tells the police she intends to press charges against whoever made the tape for obscenity. Then, the others arrive, the ones who aren't police. And minutes later, the filing clerk at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library has no memory of what she saw. Remanded into a secure storage site within the anomalous media archive of sites Redacted is what appears to be an ordinary Betamax tape. While perhaps anachronistic, maybe even archaic in the digital age, this relic of a long outdated physical video format is anything but ordinary. Any Foundation researcher with adequate clearance can find a Betamax home video system and analog television with the tape, as well as modern video equipment to record any viewing of the tape. It is requested that personnel do not remove the tape from its casing or expose it to any strong magnetic sources, especially when it is in use. Only Observation Theater 2 is cleared for use for any viewings, and these must be approved several working weeks in advance. A request form must be completed in triplicate and submitted to the Ethics Committee and the Foundation's Department of Personnel Safety and Well-Being. Many researchers are strongly advised not to watch, even if their request for a viewing is approved. Some have even completed the viewing request procedure, received an approval notice, and then not attended the scheduled viewing. Those who disregard the warnings, however, will find themselves about to witness something known as SCP-1981. Pushing the Betamax into the tape slot, some researchers have expressed concerns that they're about to see a disjointed series of images, ending on a static shot of a well. Then they'll get a phone call warning them that they only have 7 days left to live. SCP-1981 is not that tape. The handwritten adhesive label on the casing identifies the footage as Ronald Reagan cut up while talking, and sure enough, playing the tape will show footage of the 40th President of the United States. SCP-1981 contains a recording, presumably captured via a home video recording device, of Reagan delivering an infamous speech on August 3, 1983. It takes place in the Citrus Crown Ballroom of the Sheraton Twin Towers Hotel, located in Orlando, Florida. It was delivered before the National Association of Evangelicals during the height of the Cold War. Reagan's words would garner notoriety for his depiction of the Soviet Union, ironically calling them an evil empire. Reagan rejected the notion that both the USSR and the United States were equally responsible for their ongoing nuclear arms race. He positioned the conflict between the two as one of moral good and evil, depicting America as indisputably good and the Soviets as the focus of evil in the modern world. SCP-1981 is not a recording of this infamous speech, though. The footage on the tape does begin in a way that aligns with every other historical record of Reagan's speech to the National Association of Evangelicals. However, it deviates substantially after exactly 1 minute and 10 seconds. The remainder of the tape bears little to no resemblance of the speech delivered by the president, nor any other he made publicly either preceding, during, or subsequent to his time in office. The differences in the wording delivered is only the first initial difference between the Reagan and the SCP-1981 footage and other recordings of the real-world former president. The next occurs approximately 5 minutes into watching. At this time, and then continuing for the remaining duration of viewing SCP-1981, the Reagan in the footage appears to suffer multiple serious injuries. Incisions, lacerations, and penetration wounds begin to steadily appear as Ronald Reagan is cut up while he continues talking. They are most noticeably on his face, but potentially also occurring all over his body. There is seemingly no corresponding source of these injuries visible anywhere in the footage, nor do they correspond with any real-life known wounds that Reagan suffered. However, despite more lacerations continuing to appear, the Reagan in the footage appears unfazed by the bodily harm being inflicted, even when suffering injuries that, under normal circumstances, would likely incapacitate an ordinary person. The nature of the mutilation performed on Reagan has been described as extremely disturbing by a number of researchers that have viewed the footage. As a result, personnel that find themselves feeling squeamish or experiencing symptoms such as nausea are to be excused from viewings. These individuals are then mandated to visit on-site psychiatric specialists to receive a Level 3 evaluation. However, those that stay will witness the Reagan depicted in SCP-1981 continue to deliver his speech either until the end of the tape, which degrades into static after 22 minutes and 34 seconds, or until his vocal cords are severed. The mechanism by which it is possible for either of these outcomes to occur is only noticeable upon a repeat viewing of SCP-1981. Many researchers watching the tape have expressed their understandable reaction to rewind the footage and view it again, often to try and determine a source of Reagan's wounds, or rather, Ronnie, as he is referred to by some researchers, for the purposes of differentiating him from the real-life historical figure. Whenever researchers have rewound the tape, however, they quickly notice that not only do Ronnie's words seem to differ from the speech they just heard, but the injuries inflicted on him will likely also be different. SCP Foundation researchers are now aware that rewinding SCP-1981 and initiating playback will cause Ronnie to deliver an entirely different speech, even if the viewings occur subsequently, one coming immediately after the other, with the tape being rewound during the same session. The content of Ronnie's words and nature of his injuries will always be different. In most cases, each new speech is often so radically different from the last that it's easy to spot, especially among researchers who have sat through multiple viewings of SCP-1981. Among the various different permutations of the footage, a cavalcade of different disturbing topics have been addressed by Ronnie. In one notable example, after a minute and 10 seconds of villainizing the Soviet Union, he then begins an unfamiliar non sequitur fixated on the topic of ritual sacrifice. Oftentimes, Ronnie has been known to cover subjects such as torture, or one particularly gruesome subject that caused researchers present to be violently sick, leading to an immediate termination of that SCP-1981 viewing. Much like the topics he discusses, though, the physical trauma inflicted on Ronnie has been observed diverging with each subsequent watch. Indicators of him being impaled, dismembered, disemboweled, eviscerated, and even being exsanguinated have all been witnessed. There has additionally been another detail that seems to change with each viewing, though not as frequently as the different disturbing subjects or the variety of injuries inflicted. During roughly 1 of every 7 viewings of SCP-1981, there is a noticeable change that occurs not with Ronnie himself, but in the few other figures visible in the footage. While SCP-1981 seems to primarily affect this recording of the then-president, occasionally any of the members of his press detail, visible standing nearby on the stage of the Citrus Crown Ballroom, will also appear altered. Seemingly at random, one member of Ronnie's entourage seems to change appearance, going from wearing clothing of the era to being clad in black robes with a conical hood. The specific person this affects changes between viewings and doesn't appear consistently in every rewatch. However, the robed figure has appeared frequently enough to be noticed and has since been designated as SCP-1981-1. The significance of this figure is currently unknown, but their unusually ominous attire has sparked some speculation among Foundation researchers. Some have theorized that this robed figure is an anomalous being or entity that is responsible for creating the altered recording of Reagan. They may be the one inflicting injuries on the recorded version of the former president during every viewing. However, there are some within the Foundation that believe this figure to be the member of an as-yet unidentified anomalous group of interest, possibly a cult of some description. This is due to the allusions to ritual sacrifice in some versions of the speech, the hypocrisy of the original Evil Empire speech, and the overall satanic look to SCP-1981-1. In terms of determining who or what exactly SCP-1981-1 is, little information has been uncovered, and gleaning useful details from the footage on the tape has proven difficult. All that is known is that nobody else pictured in SCP-1981, including Ronnie himself, seemed to be aware of the presence of a dark-robed figure. Interpreting the exact meaning behind the SCP-1981 footage is considered something of a punishment task among SCP Foundation personnel. Members of the Anomalous Audio-Visual Analysis and Interpretation Department often lament receiving assignments that involve viewing the tape. Some have claimed that when the heads of certain research teams are displeased with specific researchers, they will maliciously assign said personnel to take part in the next scheduled viewing. Many who have been instructed to transcribe and decipher exactly what Ronnie says in viewings have often struggled to find any coherent meaning behind his words. Most viewings of SCP-1981 will depict Ronnie speaking in largely nonsensical anecdotes or incoherent parables that either vaguely link to the gruesome topic he is discussing or outright have no connection whatsoever. His speeches lack an underlying thematic messaging or any other recognizable structural components. On occasion, though, some researchers have been shocked to hear Ronnie make reference to events that he technically should not be aware of. Given that the original Evil Empire speech was made in 1983, there was no way for the actual Reagan to know about or predict specific historic events that were, at the time, still due to take place in the future. However, Ronnie has been recorded by researchers as having referenced the September 11th terror attacks on the World Trade Center, along with the results of the 2008 Russian election. Naturally, researchers found the apparent foreknowledge of the SCP-1981 version of Ronald Reagan to be a curiosity. It was for this reason that the Foundation mandated all viewings of the footage be recorded and transcribed. Rigorous time and effort has been dedicated to ensuring that every playback of SCP-1981 is not lost when the tape is rewound. One initial solution to the potential loss of the footage's permutations was to use similar non-anomalous Betamax tapes to record playbacks of SCP-1981, essentially creating a copy prior to the next new version that would be created upon a rewind. This proposal, referred to colloquially as the Samara Morgan idea, was approved. However, it ended in failure when the contents of the SCP-1981 tape could not be copied. Foundation researchers have determined that external recording devices like dictaphones and video cameras can capture individual playbacks of the tape when these devices are used to record the television it is playing on. For this reason, any viewings of SCP-1981 must be carried out with a camcorder and delivered to Dr. B for subsequent review. Dr. B is the current project supervisor tasked with ensuring the Foundation builds an archive of any and all variations of the SCP-1981 footage. In recent years, thanks to several decades of natural magnetic interference, the quality of the tape within SCP-1981 has degraded significantly. Researchers are assessing various different ways to allow the Betamax to retain its integrity and continue to be reliably played, especially given that the degradation of the footage has made it hard to derive any meaningful information from it. At the time of SCP-1981's initial containment, the real Ronald Reagan was still alive. Attempts were made by the SCP Foundation to ascertain any possible connection between him and his appearance as Ronnie on the tape. A surveillance net was established to monitor the former president and assess the relation between him and SCP-1981, as well as to glean any potential information about the figure in the black robes. While no connection between the two developed, personnel tasked with reviewing Reagan footage noted he would often make complaints about nightmares before his mental state began deteriorating due to Alzheimer's, which would end his life in 2004. Given their extensive knowledge of the various playback permutations of SCP-1981, Dr. B has been able to highlight several of note. In one recording of a viewing made in 1993, Ronnie can be heard espousing what initially sound to be some of the real Reagan's talking points about the traditional values of the United States, calling them the tendons of the country's strength. However, he then goes on to claim that a survey by a Washington-based researcher had concluded that Americans were far more willing to participate in cannibalism than they had been in the past 100 years. As Ronnie put it, America is a nation that will not suffer abominations lightly, though he interrupts his own delivery by saying numbers without context, 7, then 12, and 18. Afterwards, he declares an intention to stop Al-Qaeda, though this militant organization had not yet been founded and wouldn't until 1988, 5 years after Reagan gave his speech in Orlando. Further moments from this recording that stand out to Dr. B include the following passage given by Ronnie.
For the first time we have risen, and I see we are being consumed. I see circles that are not circles. Billions of dead souls inside containment. Unravelers have eaten the country's moral fabric, turning hearts into filth. I'm from a kingdom level above humans. What does that yield? A hokey smile that damns an entire nation.
Ronnie, after delivering this speech, states that there is no hope, a statement met with applause by the audience. Shortly after, he is seen wincing in pain as lacerations appear across his eye socket, which is vacant following an injury sustained earlier in this playback. Punctures also appear on his temples and forehead, with his left arm also being cleanly bisected. He also claims near the culmination of playback that over half of all Americans still hate. They have, in his words, been eaten whole by the void, the emptiness, the sadness, the blackness, the darkness. This receives laughter from the crowd, which continues until the tape degrades into static. Another recording from the archive, this one made 3 years later in 1996, has been included in the SCP Foundation's findings on SCP-1981. This one was considered notable by Dr. B for seemingly predicting a future collapse of the United States that is still yet to happen. Ronnie delivers a speech wherein he claims to have visited steel mills in Alaska, cornfields in Nebraska, and the derelict offices of Google. It is unknown if he is referring to the Googleplex, the corporate headquarters of Google and its parent company Alphabet Incorporated, which is situated in Mountain View, California. Ronnie describes these offices burning, with boarded-up windows and squatters living inside. He also makes references to having seen the houses where they cut up the little babies, though it is unknown what or where this is referring to. He goes on to add the following.
From coast to shining coast, I have walked empty down a drooling path, the decaying flesh of false morality poisoning our children. I have stood atop the mountain of this greedy earth, looking upon our beautiful pious pit, filled to bursting with the vast hands of helplessness. And did you know what I saw? Hell.
Upon hearing this, the audience erupts with laughter. Later in this recording, Ronnie suffers several neck wounds, seemingly so severe that his body can no longer support his own head. His speech becomes nothing but gurgles as Ronnie violently jerks forward, his head now only connected to his neck via strands of muscle tissue. Despite this, his body remains mobile and animated for the subsequent 3 minutes, continuing to make gestures as if still delivering the speech. This continues before Ronnie collapses, lifeless, until the tape once again becomes static. Not all playback recordings from the SCP-1981 archives are cleared for review. One video transcript of a recording made sometime in 2002 has been redacted and requires O5 level clearance in order to view. However, Dr. B has felt it pertinent to highlight one made 3 years later in 2005. This one is significant as it is, to this date, the only permutation of the footage where Ronnie does not appear. Instead, it opens on a long shot of the podium, as well as the empty chairs where Reagan's entourage could normally be seen. Nobody is present in this playback, at least at first. 30 seconds in, the camera zooms in closer to the podium, despite Ronnie no longer being seen standing there. Nothing occurs for a little over 2 minutes until the entity designated as SCP-1981-1 appears, entering the shot from the left before standing at the podium in place of Ronnie. It remains there for the remaining duration of the tape, motionless, and does not say anything. The degradation of SCP-1981 over the years caused the hooded figure to appear as almost translucent, though it is widely disputed whether this was caused by the age and quality of the tape itself or some unknown anomalous property of SCP-1981-1 themselves. During this playback, at 22 minutes and 34 seconds, the usual point at which the tape ends, a single-frame intertitle was observed flashing on screen. 3 words, written in red lettering, that were only visible for 7 seconds before SCP-1981 degraded into static again. The words said, "I see you." There exist 2 still frames of this playback, one of the shadowy figure at the podium, the other of the end card. According to Dr. B, this 2005 playback was the last known sighting of SCP-1981-1. The entity has been absent from all subsequent viewings of the tape. Personnel have been warned should they witness a reappearance of SCP-1981-1, they are not to attempt to communicate with it under any circumstances. Any on-duty Level 4 supervisors are to be notified immediately. The Foundation remains aware of the entity living inside the tape. Researchers have determined the figure has likely been present in every playback of SCP-1981, even if not directly observed. They do not know what to do now it can see us. Long arm stretch! The words ricocheted through the air. Suddenly, a gloved hand smashed through the bank's brick wall, sending shards of stone and dust flying through the air. The sound echoed in the narrow streets, momentarily drowning out the city's usual hum. It plunged deeper, breaking through another barrier, and then, bam, right into the vault. The hand grabbed a bag of cash, heavy with promise, and pulled back, vanishing into the wild chaos outside. The robber, cloaked in black, sprinted down the street, chomping on gum. The city buzzed around him, sirens blaring as the police jumped into action. He darted through a sea of people and honking cars, narrowly missed a mom with a stroller and a guy on a bike. "Stop! Police!" came the shouts, but the robber just kept going, his footsteps pounding in time with the sirens, an adrenaline-fueled race for survival. Each step was a risky game of dodge, avoiding the law right on his tail. People gasped, their eyes wide, caught between shock and fascination, like they were watching a bad action movie. Then, in a moment of pure madness, the robber spotted a vendor's cart overflowing with cheap souvenirs and snacks. With a leap that felt almost superheroic, he soared over the cart, feeling that brief thrill of flight. But just as he landed, disaster struck. Something was wrong. He wanted to cough, but found he couldn't. There was something caught in his throat, his chewing gum. Panic flooded through him as he dropped hard to the ground. The air rushed out of his lungs, replaced by a crushing weight in his chest. Everything around him faded into a blur of colors and sounds, and then an eerie silence. Gasping, he clawed at his throat, his eyes bulging. "Hey, you okay?" A voice cut through the chaos, but the robber couldn't respond. Nearby, 3 police officers broke through the crowd. "Get back!" one yelled, shoving people aside. They rushed to the crumpled figure on the pavement. "What's wrong?" The robber lay still, panic freezing his limbs as he turned blue, gasping for air. "Come on, someone help!" The officer's voice trembled with urgency, mixing with the growing anxiety from the crowd. The officers knelt beside the fallen figure, his hands flailing in desperation as he struggled to breathe. The once bustling street now stood still. "Breathe!" one officer shouted, pounding the robber's back, but still he silently gasped and clutched at his throat. "Time for the Heimlich!" another officer called out, positioning himself behind the robber and beginning the hopefully life-saving maneuver. With each thrust, the robber convulsed, desperately trying to find relief that wouldn't come. His eyes glazed over, the light dimmed, all sounds faded away, and then his body went limp. "Someone call for backup!" shouted the first officer. Panic rippled through the onlookers, their own faces drained of color, mouths held agape. "Stay with us!" another officer yelled, shaking the robber's shoulder, willing him to respond. But the thief lay motionless, the spark of life snuffed out, dreams of escape buried under the weight of choices made. The officers stood, faces drawn. As the crowd thinned, one officer knelt, head bowed, and searched the fallen robber for ID, rifling through his pockets. One officer pulled out a crumpled pack of chewing gum, its name glaring back. Long arms stretch. A strange silence fell over the scene. The officers exchanged glances, a shared understanding that they had stumbled onto something bizarre. Meanwhile, across town, at 2:37 a.m. in mid-Glamorgan, Wales, things were quiet aside from the faint buzz of city life. Inside a small apartment, a live stream flickered on a screen, capturing a bizarre event that would soon catch the attention of the SCP Foundation. The camera zoomed in on a young man, later labeled SCP-5021-2. He stood in the center of the room, alarmed as his right arm stretched upward, extending further and further into the air. It was both captivating and unsettling. SCP-5021-2 was visibly stressed, his voice rising in a frantic pitch as he battled against the strange phenomenon gripping his limb. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, twisting like he was trying to wrestle control back. His arm shot up like a rocket, defying all logic, seeming to have a mind of its own. The livestream chat exploded with comments. People were amazed, confused, and scared. But the fun turned chaotic as Foundation agents, always on the lookout for weirdness online, caught wind of the situation. They quickly mobilized, knowing they had to step in before things spiraled out of control. Field Agent Jones and his team arrived at the scene just blocks away from SCP-5021-2's apartment. They could see the livestream on their screens, tracking the bizarre event as it unfolded in real time. Agent Jones took a deep breath, ready for action. He hoped it wasn't too late, as they entered the apartment building. The atmosphere was tense as they climbed the stairs. When they reached the door, which was slightly open, they peeked inside. SCP-5021-2 was in full panic mode, his arm reaching for the ceiling, stretching impossibly far. "Hey, we're here to help," Agent Jones called out, stepping forward. But SCP-5021-2's arm, fueled by fear and adrenaline, shot out toward the agent, blocking his way. The agent jumped back, instinctively dodging the wildly extending limb. "Don't come any closer!" SCP-5021-2 yelled, his voice trembling. "I can't control it!" "Stay calm. We're gonna get you out of this," Agent Jones replied, assessing the situation. He needed a plan, and fast. As he scanned the room, he spotted a construction site across the street, lights glowing in the darkness. "I'm gonna get something," he shouted, bolting back outside. He dashed to the construction site and grabbed an angle grinder, the blade glinting under the streetlights. Racing back, he could hear SCP-5021-2's frantic voice echoing down the empty hallway. Agent Jones burst through the door and, without hesitating, approached the panicked young man. "This is gonna hurt, but I promise it's for the best." He switched on the grinder, its loud roar filling the tiny space. With precise movements, Agent Jones lined the tool up against the elongated arm. "Hold still!" he shouted, focusing on the task. Sparks flew as the blade cut through flesh and bone, and SCP-5021-2 screamed. But he couldn't feel pain, just a wild rush that matched the chaos. As soon as the arm was severed, something crazy happened. SCP-5021-2's shoulder slumped as he gasped for air, but the severed limb shot upward, accelerating at unbelievable speeds. It burst through the ceiling and into the night sky, breaking the sound barrier. Moments later, a sonic boom rattled windows and sent birds flying in all directions. Agent Jones stood in awe, watching as the arm became a tiny dot against the stars, soaring far beyond their view. SCP-5021-2 looked up, stunned. "Did that just happen?" he asked. "It's over now," Agent Jones assured him. "You're safe." SCP-5021-2 nodded, still trying to wrap his mind around it all. The agent helped him to his feet, surprised to see a hint of gratitude on SCP-5021-2's face, his expression softening. "Thank you for saving me," he said, his voice steadier now. As the team prepared to relocate SCP-5021-2, they noticed something strange. The severed arm began to heal, skin and muscle knitting together at an alarming speed. It was mesmerizing, yet disturbing, a testament to the bizarre powers of the anomaly. Meanwhile, Foundation personnel fanned out, interviewing witnesses in the buzzing streets. Confusion hung in the air as they spoke to bystanders, carefully erasing their memories to prevent any lasting panic. During this, they identified the vendor linked to SCP-5021. "Did you see anyone recording this?" Agent Jones asked one witness, who looked dazed. I think there was someone live streaming it," the witness stammered, still in shock. "It went viral." After the Foundation scrubbed the incident from online platforms, they crafted a cover story about an alternate reality game that had gone wrong to explain the chaos. Yet, the person who had captured the livestream remained a mystery, casting a shadow over the entire operation. As SCP-5021-2 recovered in a secure location, the researchers were buzzing with curiosity. The events of the night had opened a Pandora's box of questions. What else could this weird gum do? And were there others out there, clueless about its powers? Meanwhile, the vendor insisted that the gum had arrived with a normal shipment, and he hadn't thought anything of it. This revelation sparked an ongoing investigation to uncover the origins of this bizarre product. In a nondescript warehouse, the Foundation cataloged SCP-5021 and classified it as safe. Each pack looked ordinary, just a simple box with its name on it, containing 8 sticks of gum. But the files revealed its mind-bending effects. Once chewed for 30 seconds, SCP-5021-1 allowed its user to extend their arm at incredible speeds just by saying, "Long arm stretch." They could break through walls and barriers, but controlling where it went was another story. Users felt no pain during this wild process, only a rush of speed that was exhilarating. But once activated, the arm stretched until it hit something solid, leaving behind the ominous question of what happened next. something that would always loom large in the Foundation's research.
You'll be starting out with cold cases, the police chief tells the detective who has just arrived for his first day at the precinct. We've got more than enough to keep you busy, so head on down to the archives and get started. The new detective is looking forward to taking on these unsolved crimes. Cracking the overlooked and long-since forgotten cases is one of his specialties, and it brings him great joy to solve the puzzles that no one else has been able to. The detective heads to a part of the police station that doesn't look like it sees much foot traffic, where he finds the door labeled Archives. Inside the room, the air is musty, and when the detective sets down his bag on a table, a thick cloud of dust is ejected and makes him sneeze. He takes out the list of cases he's supposed to be working on and goes to a shelf containing rows and rows of evidence boxes. He pulls one down and starts looking through the files inside. It's full of police reports, witness statements, crime scene photos, and even bits of evidence. Hours pass as the detective goes down his list, looking through box after box, report after report. He finds that it's best to take a cursory survey first and see if anything leaps out at him, before drilling down to start combing through the details. As he pulls down the last box from his list of cases that the chief told him to work on, he notices something. High up on a shelf, nestled among the many identical cardboard boxes, is what looks to be a piece of leather luggage. He can't help but wonder what this is doing here in the archives. Is it a piece of evidence from another case that got left here for some reason? Or did someone simply forget their bag after they finished looking through old files? Whatever the reason it's here, he has a job to do, and investigating this bag isn't on his list. But then again, he knows he won't be able to focus until he knows what this bag is and what's inside. He'll let himself take just a quick peek, then it's back to work. The detective returns to the shelf with the bag. It looks like it's been here for a long time. There's a layer of dust covering it that's as thick as anything else in the room. He takes it down and blows the dust off the bag. He unlatches it, and inside he finds a folder. Is this just another report? But what's it doing here? Maybe they ran out of boxes one day and someone decided to use an old briefcase instead. The detective takes out the folder and opens it. Just as he suspected, it is another case report. It's only a single page, though, with several photographs paper-clipped to it. He takes the photos off the report and begins looking through them. They appear to be numbered in order, and the first picture shows a mess of red liquid and chunks of what might be meat or bone. The next two show various angles of a badly mutilated corpse. It's been so violently mangled, though, that the victim is barely even recognizable as a human. The detective paperclips the photos back to the report and puts it back in the case. If this murder only has one page of evidence to work with, then he is classifying it as a revisit after literally everything else in the room is solved kind of case. The detective goes back to the last box that he was looking through and starts flipping through the case files again, but something about that leather briefcase and the photos inside won't get out of his mind. Maybe there is something there. Without even realizing it, he's suddenly standing over the case again. He takes out the report and starts looking through the pictures once more. Again, he sees the disfigured corpse from different angles, but the fourth picture is completely different. This one shows what looks to be someone's feet, but they're up in the air, as if they jumped and took a picture of their shoes. There's something wrong with the picture too, some kind of odd discoloration around the edges. It looks like an error occurred in the development process. Why would this be in a case file? It's tugging at his curiosity. But no, he really shouldn't be spending his time on this, not on his first day at a new job. The detective places everything back in the case and puts it back up on the shelf where he found it before deciding to call it a day. That night, he finds that he can't sleep. The detective keeps seeing the disfigured face every time he closes his eyes. And why the picture of floating feet? What does it all mean? His mind is racing, trying to make sense of it all. By the time his alarm starts beeping, the detective realizes that he hasn't slept at all. Later that morning, the detective is back in the chief's office again. The chief tells him that he looks awful and asks if the job is getting to him already. The detective does look terrible, and something about the room is making him very uncomfortable. The ceiling feels too low, like it moved down a foot or two since the last time he was here. It's also very dim. Who can operate in such a dark room? He stands up and asks if he can turn on some more lights, and before the chief can answer, he switches on more. The chief squints from the bright fluorescent lights coming on and tells the detective to get back to work and to make sure he gets some sleep that night. If he can't, then maybe this job isn't for him. The detective returns to the archives to pick up where he left off the day before and goes back to looking through the files on his list. But of course, that leather briefcase always seems to be right in his field of view, reaching out to him, begging him to uncover its secrets. That's it, the detective thinks. He has no choice. He has to know what's going on with this file. He takes the briefcase down again, opens the report, and starts going through the photos again. 3 pictures of a gross corpse, check. Picture 4 showing someone's feet. Nothing new there. Now it's time to finally look at the rest. The 5th picture is similar to the 4th, but the person's feet look a little closer to the ground. Wait a minute. Are these in reverse order? He looks at the next. This one doesn't have anyone in it. It's a picture of a table, and it looks like there is writing on it, though the writing is very small. He leans in close and squints, but he still can't make it out. He runs to his own bag and searches around until he finds what he was looking for, a magnifying glass. He goes back to the picture, and with the magnifying glass he can finally read the writing. It's above you. He snaps his head up and looks above him, but nothing is there. He laughs to himself. Of course nothing is there. Maybe the chief is right. Maybe something really is getting to him and he isn't cut out for this job. But still, he needs to learn more. He looks at the 7th picture. He sees now that he was right. These are definitely in reverse chronological order. In the next picture, he sees whoever took the photos approaching the table in the room. In the 10th photo, he sees them walking through a doorway. In the 11th, he sees them opening the door to the room. Finally, he comes to the last photo. It's a photo of the closed door to the room. There's writing on the door, and the detective can hardly believe what he is seeing when he reads it. The writing on the door says, "Archives." The detective jumps up and spins around, but the room is empty. There's no one here but him. What's going on? Is this some kind of prank? He picks up the report the pictures were attached to. There must be some answers in there. The paper appears to be a standard police report that was filled out following the discovery of a homicide. The top of the page lists the address where the murder took place. It's the very place he is now, the police station's address. Next to it is the date. It's impossible, though. The date is today's. Archives can hold untold secrets, and many of those are often quite dangerous, as anyone familiar with the SCP Foundation is already well aware. Rarely is the file in the archive itself the danger, but that is exactly the case with SCP-973, a deadly series of crime scene photos that are anything but what they seem. SCP-973 is the designation for a series of anomalous objects, which were recovered from a police department's own archives. They include a series of 12 Polaroid photographs, which have been given the designation SCP-767-1 through 12, that appear to be the source of the anomalous properties surrounding the objects. Each photograph is labeled 1 through 12 in the lower left-hand corner, though they appear to be labeled in reverse chronological order. When viewed in reverse, that is, starting with the picture labeled 12, the photos depict a first-person perspective of someone entering a room and examining a table. The table will have writing on it, which alternates between the iterations of SCP-973, and will either read, "It's above you," or "On the ceiling," written with a red substance that appears to be fresh blood. The next photos continue to be from a first-person perspective, and will show the person taking the photos being lifted up into the air above the table, with wisps of black smoke visible around the edges of the frame, that look at first glance like either photo development issues or damage to the picture. The final 3 pictures depict a fresh corpse that has been so heavily mutilated by lacerations that it is completely unrecognizable, while the last picture shows a body that appears to have been virtually liquefied in some way, with gore and viscera spread around the room. The origin of these photos is unknown, and it's unknown if they were ever taken at all or merely manifested in some way. When the photos are taken to a new location and are allowed to remain there for 1 week, they will change to reflect a room within the building where they are being kept, with the individual portrayed in the photos being an image of the last person to experience the photo's frightening effects. More on what those are later. The ability of SCP-767 to change based on the location it is in is also present in SCP-767-13 and 14, which are the police report and the brown leather valise that always accompany the photos. The police report has an address and date at the top, both of which will somehow change to reflect the current date and location of SCP-767, while the leather briefcase has a gold monogram on it that will change to whatever the name is of the owner or head of the structure that it is contained in. But that is far from where the anomalous properties of SCP-767 end. Individuals who are exposed to the photographs will experience a wide range of effects that are based on how far into the photo series they look. Those that view SCP-767-1 through 3 will report feeling no special effects, besides the normal reaction one has to seeing a badly mutilated corpse, with most describing the photos as weird or disturbing. Those that view the photos labeled 4 through 6, though, will usually report that they have developed feelings of claustrophobia, with many also reporting a newfound bout of nyctophobia, that is, fear of the dark, or more specifically, a fear of the potential for bad things to happen in the dark. These fears will also vary in intensity based on how many of the photos were viewed. Subjects who are exposed to the 7th, 8th, and 9th photos will feel an overwhelming desire to inspect the ceiling, and most are observed snapping their heads upwards immediately after reading the writing on the table in the photo. In later interviews, subjects have described the feeling as instinctual, or as if someone had yelled the words at them like a warning. Following this, the subject will experience a sensation of being watched and will usually report having persistent chills. Those who view the final 3 photos will appear to suffer a fear-induced paralysis effect when they attempt to move away from the photos. A shadowy, black, effervescent mass will begin to form on the ceiling directly above the subject, which has been designated SCP-767-15, though the presence of this mass has only been reported by in-person witnesses, as it doesn't appear on photographic or video recordings. Tendrils of the gaseous material will reach down from the mass and grab the affected subject, lifting them up into the air before violently attacking them. The subject will suffer deep lacerations as the tendrils cut into it before it completely destroys them, leaving them as little more than a pool of blood and pieces of flesh. The nature of this dark cloud of gas, where it comes from, or why it engages in this behavior is currently unknown, and attempts to stop it once it has gotten hold of its victim have only led to those who intervene being pushed away by a powerful force, with all weapons passing harmlessly through the mass. In the time since its discovery by the SCP Foundation, multiple other unsolved cases of victims that appeared to suffer similar fates have been identified, and investigations into whether they are connected to SCP-767 and the 767-15 entity are ongoing. The SCP-767-1 through 12 photos are to be kept inside of the SCP-767-13 report, which is itself stored within the brown leather SCP-767-14 valise. And the entire group is kept at an SCP Foundation Hazardous Items Secure Containment Center. Due to the little we understand about its nature or origin, the entirety of the anomalous objects that make up SCP-767, including the SCP-767-15 entity, have been classified as Euclid, and any access to the objects requires written authorization from at least one Level 4 site administrator. SCP-767 may not be the most dangerous file in the SCP Foundation's archive, but it may just be the most dangerous literal file. There are plenty other surprisingly dangerous objects that can impact you in ways you never expected, though, like SCP-1875, the antique chess automaton that is capable of powerful effects that you have to see to believe.
November 19, 1998. In the bowels of an SCP Foundation containment facility, a low-level Foundation clerk wheels a covered gurney towards a testing lab. He doesn't even know what he's transporting, just that it's something extremely important and somehow related to a dangerous uncontained anomaly. He leaves the gurney in the lab as a pair of scientists give him a silent nod. The clerk has survived this long with Level 2 clearance thanks to his ability to keep his head down. He doesn't intend to compromise his track record by changing that attitude now. The clerk leaves without a word, and the scientists get to work. One of them removes the cover over the gurney to see the highly classified item underneath. A McRib, a famous limited edition McDonald's menu item that somehow turned the lowest quality pork available into a much desired big-ticket item. It's a heavy hitter for the company's seasonal menu, appearing for brief, tantalizing periods before being yanked off the market again to build anticipation for its next appearance. To the untrained eye, there is nothing differentiating this from a regular McRib. It's not even any more caustic to human health than the non-anomalous variant. The biggest difference is that this McRib, rather than the aforementioned low-quality pork, is made out of 89% human flesh. And the most frightening part, this is far from the most bizarre element of this particular anomaly. The scientists already know that what they're dealing with here is a human McRib. That much isn't in question. What they want to find out is who this particular McRib is made out of. It doesn't take them long to discover that it's yet another chilling data point in a terrifying pattern. The burger is made from the flesh of someone who disappeared under violent and mysterious circumstances, just like all the others. In this case, Emma Richards, a 34-year-old woman who disappeared from her home earlier that summer. According to those who knew her, it was as though she'd just up and left one day, offering no reason why. That wasn't like her at all. As they work, the scientists determine the meat in the McRib seems to have been extracted from her belly and thigh. In January of 1999, these same scientists will test another McRib, only to find it perfectly matches the DNA of another person who went missing under extremely mysterious circumstances. Tony Michaels, a man in his 40s, at first thought to have been killed in a drunk driving accident, but his body was never found at the scene. Instead, flesh from his cheek and shoulder somehow made it into the sandwich. In November of that same year, these scientists will also, regrettably, get an answer to the question of what happened to Amy Baker. Her parents had left her at home the previous month, where she'd gone missing in what was believed to be a home invasion and kidnapping scenario. Her parents will never be able to give her a proper burial. The meat in the sandwich appears to have been sourced from eyes and hands. What's going on here? Is this some international conspiracy that goes right to the heart of McDonald's corporate headquarters? Thankfully, no. In fact, it didn't take the Foundation long to realize that all of this madness is centered around one very specific location, the local McDonald's franchise in Martindale, Indiana. And this isn't as simple as some mad cannibalistic serial killer who also happens to be a McDonald's line cook. Nobody knows what process causes the meat to be infused with human flesh. The meat that's delivered to the restaurant is non-anomalous, low-end pork. At some point during the cooking process, this is replaced or transformed into the meat of these missing people, and even the Foundation can't figure out when, how, or why. But it isn't the Foundation that begins this investigation, nor another investigative group of interest like the Global Occult Coalition or even law enforcement. It's a local journalist named Christian Curtis, an investigative reporter for the Indianapolis Star, whose beat involves taking down local businesses with a tendency toward screwing over their customers. Back in 1997, he's working on a groundbreaking piece about local restaurants and grocers skirting food safety regulations. And it's during this little campaign that he first finds out about the McRib. He receives a tip from an anonymous concerned citizen who said of the McRib at the local McDonald's, quote, "Meat is gamey and unnaturally flavorful, feels off somehow. Texture is very unusual, too soft for pork, but with a queer firmness upon biting. Rib sauce is bitter and tastes heavily of iron, maybe spoiled." With a hot tip like that, Curtis can hardly resist getting involved. He visits the McDonald's branch, pretending to be just another customer, and at face value, there doesn't appear to be anything out of the ordinary. The customer seems satisfied and the staff seems clean, professional, and attentive, but that doesn't mean the story isn't worth following through on. After all, one of the things you learn as an investigative reporter is that appearances can be deceiving. Curtis orders a McRib and leaves, taking samples to send to a local food testing lab, who find that the composition of the meat is highly unusual, though they never even begin to expect that they're dealing with human flesh. Before the article can even be published, the suspected health code violation gets the city council and even the local police involved. Before you can say salmonella, the city health inspector has shut down the Martindale McDonald's location until the investigation can be properly conducted. It seems almost like this is a situation that takes care of itself without the SCP Foundation even getting involved. An anomalous McDonald's location is serving human flesh, and the health inspector shuts it down. But sadly, this isn't the end of the matter. It's just the beginning. On October 29, 1997, 4 days after the city closes the McDonald's, something extremely strange starts to happen. Local police are called in after a large and seemingly rowdy crowd gathers outside the closed Martindale McDonald's location, angry and confused about the closure of their favorite restaurant in town, especially during McRib season. When some local cops are dispatched to contain the incident, they almost find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the McRib-loving citizens. The official police report on the matter reads, "The crowd was unhappy and unsatisfied with any reason given as to why the McDonald's had been closed. Several individuals approached the perimeter to ask when it would be reopened, and when told there was no definite date, became agitated and requested permission to cross the perimeter to make a sandwich for themselves. These individuals were persistent, unwilling to take no for an answer, and on several occasions had to be pulled back away from the building where they had crossed the line. This continued for several hours until sheriff's deputies arrived to help disperse the crowd. It would seem almost too far-fetched to be true if it wasn't for multiple reliable eyewitness reports to corroborate the details. Another one of the officers in attendance, Mr. Sam Hill, added this to the official record. They were insatiable. I kept trying to tell them that they couldn't go in, that the meat was spoiled, and that there were health concerns involved, but it was like they couldn't hear what I was saying. They didn't even look at me. They just stared straight past us and towards the building. One woman I had to restrain and pull back out, and the entire time she kept repeating, "I just need a taste. Give me a taste. I just want a taste." Same thing with Officer Derry when he got there from county. It was like they were transfixed. No amount of explaining what was happening made a difference with them. Thankfully, the first responders are able to get the crowd to reluctantly disperse without resorting to more severe crowd control measures, but there's a strange sense of foreboding in the air. The feeling that nothing was solved here, and that the can has just been kicked further down the road for some awful yet inevitable outcome still to come. Not a word is exchanged on the matter, but everyone there knows it. And that's why a detail of 10 officers is placed around the McDonald's that night, hoping to head off the fears that the same group of embittered locals might return and break in. The leader of the group, Officer Jeff Moore, already somehow has this creeping sense that 10 won't be enough to hold off whatever's coming, but he doesn't want to look weak in the line of duty. This will cost him and all the others dearly. The Martindale, Indiana McDonald's is on the edge of town, bordered on 3 sides by a relatively dense thicket of trees. A single road leads towards the McDonald's itself. It's the kind of place you might see in the dead of night while driving from one town to another, the faint glow of the golden arches peeking out above the tree line. The kind of place that makes you think, wow, they'll put a McDonald's anywhere, huh? As the hours creep on, night starts to fall. 7 of the officers stand outside, armed with little more than the pistols holstered at their hips. On the inside, Officer Moore and 2 others wait, forming a kind of rudimentary command center. Perhaps it's the boredom and the growing dark causing their eyes to play tricks on them, but Moore and the others can swear that he sees people moving amongst the trees. Or at least, he's pretty sure those are people. It's hard to make out other than some shadowy figures that dart from trunk to trunk. Only a couple at first, but then more and more and more. What could they be planning out there? He tries his best to keep observing without losing his nerve. But as the figures in the woods seem to multiply, that's getting harder and harder to achieve. And when Moore and the others hear a loud, wet thud against the side of the building, their hearts nearly leap out of their throats in shock. But they're on the clock, and that means they have to investigate no matter how scared they are. As Moore investigates, the sense of unease grows. Something's wrong. He knows he should act on his growing suspicions and start calling it all into the station. He starts to radio in, but before he can say anything, he's interrupted by the sounds of panicked shouting from the officers on the other side of the McDonald's. And soon, that shouting is underscored by a smattering of gunfire and screams. Moore draws his own handgun and tries to stop his hands from shaking as he runs back through the restaurant to look out the window and see what the hell is going on here. And what he sees out of that window is something straight out of a nightmare. It's the customers. The same people who had been crowding outside the store earlier, demanding to be let in, demanding their precious McRibs on pain of an uprising. They're running out of the tree line, yelling and snarling. But it's not just that. They're different. Moore thinks they must all be wearing hats at first, elaborate headdresses with large, ceremonial antlers, like the kind you see on a stag. But no, that's not it. That's not it at all. Those antlers are growing right out of their skulls, just like the jagged rows of fangs in their jaws and the long, serrated claws where their fingernails should be. They shrug off the gunshots being unleashed against them as they set upon the assembled guards, biting, clawing, chewing. Moore has never been so afraid in his life as he watches his fellow officers fall to the hungry tide, crashing against them. Should he shoot? Should he run? Would either option help him anymore? Moore tries to gibber a plea for help into the phone, incoherently babbling about how he and his men are being attacked and killed. as the front doors smash open and the customers lunge for him. All that Moore can choke out into the phone is, "They're not people!" After the monstrous Martindale McDonald's massacre, the SCP Foundation enters our story at long last. It isn't every day that something emerges from the woods and effortlessly slaughters 10 cops. Foundation field agents embedded in regional law enforcement quickly nip any further police involvement in the bud and pass the assignment up the chain. Within the hour, a Foundation cleanup crew led by Agent John Freeman arrives on the scene, hoping to get everything under control and potentially treat and debrief survivors. But not only are there no survivors, there are barely even any bodies, mainly just skeletons, loosely draped with the police uniforms they wore in life, eaten all the way down to the bone by their ravenous assailants. Even the cleanup crew, who, as you can probably imagine, have seen some truly horrifying things on the job, can't hide their disgust at what they're seeing here. The only other evidence, in addition to the bodies, are the words, "Reopen tomorrow," scrawled across the nearby sidewalk in blood. It's a devotion to the McDonald's cause that not even Ronald himself could be expected to muster. Before undergoing voluntary amnestic treatment to scrub some of the more unpleasant edges of this particular memory out of his mind, Agent Freeman gave a detailed and extremely unsettling statement on what he'd witnessed that fateful night. What was immediately apparent was the power dynamic between the attackers and their targets. The officers killed were not men with guns. They were prey animals at the mercy of a carnivorous host. There was no law of engagement between the two. Most were rendered unrecognizable, aside from that which could not be consumed. Badges and weapons were left untouched, but the soft meat of the body was picked apart like carrion. Throughout the entire night, we were being watched. They had already had their fill, but the most impassioned among them still demanded our attention. They stayed at the tree line, just far enough away that we couldn't see their gnarled and broken faces, but could still make out the long and twisting antlers extending out of their scalps in the moonlight. They wanted us to know that they knew. But then it's no different than when any access to food is removed from a group that depends on it. Remove a population of deer, and the wolves begin to starve, and then their behavior changes. They've certainly been here far longer than we have. It's not unexpected that they would have found a way to simplify the process of gathering food the same way we have. How are their actions any different than our own? Reducing animals to neatly packaged meat discs to be sold to the public for just a single $1 or less. Only real distinction here is that we're the meat. One of them was standing in the shadows near my car when I went to leave. It was an enormous thing, stretched unnaturally thin and wretched, shuddering and shaking like each breath was the death rattle of every living being around it. Flesh changers aren't something I'm unfamiliar with, and this wasn't the first time I'd seen their work, but never had I been so close to one. I asked it what it wanted from us, why they had killed those men, though we both knew that I understood it perfectly clear. And in that moment, I had never been so small in my entire life. Despite all my experiences, a life lived fully and whatever else I had to offer still ahead of me, in that moment, I was a convenient tube of packaged meat, neatly tucked away until such time as it was needed. When it answered, its voice was like dry wind over an empty field. It said 6 words before it melted back into the dark.
Reopen tomorrow. Don't change the menu.
And that's the kind of offer that not even the SCP Foundation could refuse. They had an ultimatum before them, a cost-benefit analysis, if you will. Much like the Martindale police officers, they could try to keep the McDonald's closed, even if it meant fighting off the horrific customers to keep them at bay and potentially losing huge numbers of personnel as a result. Or worse, risk the customers looking for their fix elsewhere and causing massacres all over the state of Indiana. Or they could instead engage in controlled sacrifices. People only disappeared during McRib season, after all, and those disappearances were always esoteric enough that they could be easily written off as having non-anomalous causes. They could monitor the McDonald's and let it have its pound of flesh, metaphorically and literally speaking, without it going any further. Can you guess what they did? Due to the complex nature of SCP-6745, it's one of the rare anomalies that has both a primary and secondary containment class. The primary class being esoteric, meaning that it doesn't comfortably exist within the framework of Safe, Euclid, and Keter classes. It also has Thaumiel as its secondary class, a rare containment class reserved for anomalies that contain other anomalies. And in this case, I suppose that fits, given the role that the McDonald's plays in satiating its violent and terrifying anomalous customer base. Being one of the more recently classified anomalies on the database, its file also has risk and disruption classes. The risk in this case is danger, meaning that the physical risk it represents is significant to extreme, which any of its victims easily could have told you if they hadn't been somehow killed and transformed into sandwiches. Its disruption class is Kennic, meaning that its radius of potential normality disruption is as wide as at least an average city and could spread frighteningly quickly. SCP-6745 is another one of those anomalies where the containment methods, while effective, likely won't leave you with a feeling of comfort. For all the reasons previously discussed, the Foundation deemed closing the restaurant to be a far greater risk to normalcy than keeping it open, given the extreme violence the customers are liable to commit if their appetites aren't satisfied in a controlled manner. Foundation agents work undercover as members of the local community and law enforcement to minimize any potential breaches of containment protocols within the McDonald's building itself. During the season when the McRib is on the menu, these embedded agents are to report any unusual civilian behavior to Site 81 for recording and archival purposes. Knowledge of what goes on within SCP-6745 must be kept under wraps at all costs, including within the Foundation itself, where full knowledge of the file is restricted to Level 4 personnel and above. Anyone seen expressing a desire to tell others about SCP-6745 must be detained and treated with powerful Class C amnestics. After all, if news of the goings-on here ever go public, the Foundation certainly won't be loving it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a break from my Foundation duties to grab some lunch. All this research has left me craving a McRib. The crate arrived on a gray morning, its wood damp from the mist that clung to the streets. No note, no address. The old shopkeeper dragged it inside, muttering curses under his breath. Business had been slow, the candy shop hanging by a thread. Maybe this was some promotional miracle, or a mistake. The crate groaned as it opened, nails straining against the wood. Inside sat a vending machine, like nothing he'd ever seen. Mechanical and polished to a gleam, it had a presence that felt wrong. The glass dome at the top revealed rows of perfectly round candies, their colors so vibrant they seemed to glow. He tilted the machine slightly, spotting words engraved on the underside. "Try something different today, sweet and candy red." He snorted and shook his head. Who writes this stuff? Still, desperate times. He dusted off a corner near the front window and set the machine there. Its coin slot caught the light, winking at him like it knew something he didn't. The old man stared at it for a moment before fishing a coin from his pocket. One little test couldn't hurt. The coin clinked as it slid in. He pulled the lever, and the machine whirred mechanically, spitting out a single candy into the tray below. It was perfect, round, red, and faintly glistening. He rolled it in his palm before popping it into his mouth. The flavor hit him like a revelation. Sweetness bloomed on his tongue, bright and irresistible. It was like every childhood memory condensed into one perfect bite. For a moment, he forgot the world, forgot the bills, forgot the empty streets outside. Then, it turned. The sweetness soured, twisting into something sharp and metallic. His tongue burned, his throat tightening as if a fist had gripped it. His vision blurred, the shop tilting wildly around him. A pressure built in his chest, and his heart thudded like it was trying to escape. The whispers came next, soft at first, then getting louder. They skittered around his mind. His hands trembled, and he clawed at his shirt as though it might stop the suffocating weight pressing down on him. Then came the blood. At first, he dismissed the dampness under his arms, thinking it was sweat from the panic gripping him. But when he pulled his trembling hand away from his shirt, it was slick and red. His heart stopped, or at least it felt like it, as he looked down. Crimson stains seeped through his sleeves, pooling in the folds of his armpits. The sticky wetness spread to his toes, soaking his socks and dripping onto the wooden floor. "No," he whispered, his voice shaky. "No, no." The old man stumbled toward the mirror behind the counter, catching his reflection. bloodshot eyes stared back at him, veins bulging and red tears streaming down his face. A faint trail of red trickled from his nose, dripping onto the counter. The sight twisted his stomach, and he nearly collapsed as the whispers in his head grew louder. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He tried to wipe the blood away, but it only smeared, leaving crimson streaks on his pale skin. His trembling legs gave out, and he fell behind the counter, the whispers rising to a deafening roar in his ears. He stumbled backward, crashing into the shelves behind the counter. Glass jars rattled and fell, the sound barely registering. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air as the whispers rose to a crescendo. Cold sweat dripped down his back, pooling around him as his body shook uncontrollably. The machine stood silent, its polished surface reflecting the shopkeeper's pale, horrified face. Hours passed before the shopkeeper stirred. He sat up slowly, his breath shallow and uneven. Every inch of him screamed with exhaustion, his heart racing as though it might burst. His throat was raw, and every breath felt like swallowing shards of glass. The blood had dried, crusting over his skin and clothes. The whispers had faded, but they still echoed faintly in the corners of his mind. He staggered to his feet, gripping the counter for support. His eyes darted to the candy machine in the corner, its polished surface gleaming in the dim light. The lever glinted, innocent and inviting, as if mocking him. A sudden surge of anger jolted him into action. He grabbed a large garbage bag from behind the counter, the crinkle of the plastic loud in the stillness of the shop. With trembling hands, he approached the machine. His fingers hesitated on the glass dome containing the candies, but the whispers that had haunted him surged in his mind, spurring him forward. He yanked the dome off with a sharp pull, the glass cool and unnervingly smooth under his fingers. It felt heavier than he'd expected, or maybe that was just the weight of the fear gnawing at him. One by one, the gumballs tumbled into the bag, their faintly shimmering surfaces catching the light as they fell in an almost hypnotic cascade. The shopkeeper tightened the bag with a savage twist, tying it shut with a knot that his shaking hands barely managed. He marched to the alley behind the shop, each step driven by a mixture of determination and dread. The garbage bin stood there, rusting and leaning slightly to one side, its lid askew. He threw the bag inside with more force than necessary, the gumballs rattling against the metal like sinister marbles. Slamming the lid shut, he lingered for a moment, his breath coming in uneven gasps. The whispers in his mind seemed fainter now, but they weren't gone. Back inside the shop, his gaze drifted back to the machine. A wrench sat on the counter nearby, and for a moment, the temptation to destroy the machine entirely burned hot in his chest. He grabbed the wrench, its weight familiar and reassuring in his grip. But then he stopped. His knuckles turned white as he stared at the machine, its presence almost daring him to make the first move. What if destroying it made things worse? What if the whispers came back stronger, angrier? The shopkeeper set the wrench down, his hands shaking. "Not yet," he whispered to himself, backing away. The machine remained, gleaming silently, patient as ever. He scrubbed at his arms, smearing dried blood into his sleeves. He could still feel the whispers slithering through his thoughts. Panic started to grip at him. That night, he bolted the shop door and hid in the back room, far from the machine's gleaming temptation. But the next morning, when he mustered the courage to unlock the shop and face the world, his heart sank. The machine was full again, its candy stock replenished as though nothing had happened. The polished surface seemed brighter, its engraving, "Try something different today, sweet and candy red," catching the light with unnerving cheer. The shopkeeper backed away. He swore he heard faint whispers as he fled to the back room. The shopkeeper's mind unraveled day by day. He barely left the back room, haunted by panic attacks and phantom voices. His wife found him pacing, muttering under his breath, or staring blankly at the wall. "You're scaring the customers," she snapped, shoving an order book into his hands. "Stay here if you're going to be useless." She dismissed his warnings as nonsense. Overwork, she told herself. A man his age running a shop without help was bound to take a toll. To her, the machine was a blessing. Customers were curious, drawn to its sleek design and the novelty of its candies. Sales were up, and she had no intention of getting rid of it. One sunny afternoon, a young boy walked into the shop with his mother. He barely noticed the jars of licorice or the rows of sugar sticks. His attention locked onto the vending machine. His small hands clenched his mother's skirt, his voice rising in excitement. "I want that one," he said, pointing at the machine. His mother frowned. "You have plenty of candy at home." "But I don't have that one," the boy whined, tugging harder. His voice grew louder with every protest, drawing glances from other customers. The mother sighed, digging into her purse for a coin. "Fine," she said, her tone weary. She dropped the coin into his eager palm. "But you're not eating it until after dinner, understand?" The boy nodded, already bounding toward the machine. The coin clinked into the slot, and he pulled the lever with all his might. A single candy dropped into the dispenser. He plucked it out, holding it up like a prize. The candy shimmered faintly, its surface glossy and vibrant, almost too perfect. "Thank you, Mommy," he chirped, clutching it tightly as they left the shop. The shopkeeper's wife watched them go, shaking her head. "Kids and their sweets," she muttered, turning back to the counter. She didn't notice the faint hum that lingered in the air, nor the way the machine's lever reset itself, ready for the next customer. That evening, the boy bolted through his dinner, his fork clattering against the plate as he devoured the meal with all the grace of a starved animal. "Can I have it now?" he asked, mouth still half full. His mother sighed, exchanging a glance with his father before nodding. "Go ahead," she said, "but brush your teeth after." The boy didn't wait for further permission. He sprinted to his room, slamming the door behind him. Perched on his bed, he pulled the candy from his pocket. The wrapper crinkled as he took it off, the sound sharp and electric in the quiet room. He held the candy up, turning it in his fingers, marveling at the faint shimmer. With a triumphant grin, he popped it into his mouth. The sweetness hit him like a tidal wave, a syrupy explosion of flavor that made his eyes water. He murmured, savoring it. But then, it changed. The sweetness soured, turning sharp and metallic. A bitterness clawed at the back of his throat, and his stomach churned. Suddenly, a jolt of pain shot through him like an electric shock. His fingers twitched uncontrollably, dropping the candy wrapper onto the floor. Then, the whispers began. They were faint at first, a low murmur brushing the edges of his consciousness, but they grew louder, insistent, a cacophony of voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. His hands shot to his ears, trying to block out the noise, but it was inside his head, crawling under his skin. "Stop!" he screamed, his voice high and cracked. "Make it stop!" The shadows in his room seemed to move. His toy cars, neatly lined up on the shelf, rattled as if an unseen hand had brushed against them. His favorite stuffed bear toppled from the bed, its button eyes glinting eerily in the dim light. He scrambled backward, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but there was nowhere to go. Blood pooled under his arms, seeping through his shirt and leaving dark stains on his pajama sleeves. The tips of his socks grew red and damp, sticky with a crimson sheen that spread to the carpet. A sharp sting burned at the corner of his eyes. He wiped at them, but his hand came away smeared with red. "Mom!" he shrieked, but the words were barely coherent. He doubled over, his stomach twisting. Blood dripped from his nose, splattering onto the candy wrapper as his body convulsed. His skin glistened with sweat, streaked with faint trails of crimson. The door burst open, and his parents rushed in. His mother froze in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God!" she gasped. His father darted forward, grabbing the boy's trembling shoulders. "What's happening to him?" he yelled, his voice rising with panic. The boy clawed at his father's arms, his wide eyes darting around the room, as though he were seeing something they couldn't. "It's here!" he choked out, his voice raw. "It's here!" The candy wrapper lay discarded on the floor, the faint, sweet smell lingering in the air. The mother picked it up with trembling fingers, staring at it as if it held the answer. But the glossy paper offered no clues, only the lingering promise of something sweet and candy red. The boy's cries echoed through the neighborhood that night, his parents' shouts barely masking the chaos. By morning, everyone had heard the story, or some version of it. Whispers swirled in the corners of the diner and at the general store. "Did you hear about that boy?" someone would ask, leaning in as if the details might vanish if spoken too loudly. "Blood everywhere, they say. And the candy from that machine," another neighbor would add, hushed but eager. The candy shop itself seemed to hold its breath. Fewer parents dared to enter, casting wary glances at the vending machine through the window. But their children, wide-eyed and curious, couldn't resist pressing their noses to the glass. It didn't take long for the machine to claim another child. This time, it was a shy girl with pigtails, her cheeks flushed as she clutched a few coins in her tiny hand. She'd saved every penny of her allowance, eyeing the forbidden candy with growing curiosity each time she passed the shop. Today, her chance had come. Her mother lingered in the bookstore next door, engrossed in a discussion about the latest novel. The girl seized the moment, slipping into the shop as quietly as a shadow. The shopkeeper's wife sat at the counter, poring over a stack of receipts. She barely looked up as the girl approached the vending machine. The girl hesitated, her heart pounding as she slid the coin into the slot. The lever felt cold in her small hand. She pulled it, her breath catching as the candy tumbled into the dispenser. She picked it up, gazing at its shimmering surface. For a moment, she thought she heard a faint hum, but she brushed it off and darted out of the shop, her prize clutched tightly. That night, her parents found her curled under her bed. Her hands and feet were crusted with dried blood, the metallic smell filling the room. At first, they thought she'd hurt herself, but a frantic inspection revealed no injuries, just the grotesque patterns of her own sweat pooling and drying in thick, crimson streaks.
"Sweetheart,"
her mother whispered, kneeling to meet her daughter's hollow stare.
"what happened?"
The girl didn't answer. Her lips moved, but the words were nonsense. Broken phrases and murmurs that made no sense. Tears streamed from her bloodshot eyes, staining her cheeks red. Her parents exchanged terrified glances, their child trembling and unresponsive in their arms. The town's unease deepened when the next incident followed just days later. A boy, known for his boldness and love of adventure, used his pocket money to buy the candy. He was last seen stuffing it into his mouth as he walked toward the woods, a wide grin on his face. Hours passed before his family found him, barefoot and wandering aimlessly through the trees. His clothes were torn, his skin streaked with dirt and blood. His face was pale, his expression blank.
"Son, what happened to you?"
his father asked, gripping the boy's shoulders, his voice shaking. The boy blinked, his eyes unfocused. His lips quivered as he whispered,
"I don't know."
His father's grip tightened.
"What do you mean you don't know? Where have you been?"
The boy looked down at his hands, coated in blood. He held them up, trembling.
"Who am I?"
he asked softly. His parents stepped back in horror. The boy didn't seem to recognize them, or himself. There were no injuries, no explanation for the blood, only silence, broken by the boy's ragged breathing and his mother's sobs. The shop became a cursed place. Parents yanked their children away from the windows, their warnings growing sharper.
"Stay away from there. Do you hear me?"
A chorus of "Yes, ma'am," and "Yes, sir," followed, but the children's eyes still darted toward the machine, their curiosity gnawing at them. The shopkeeper's wife was no fool. She noticed the dwindling foot traffic and the fearful glances.
"It's just a machine,"
she muttered one evening, sweeping the floor. But that's when the shopkeeper's wife remembered something strange. No matter how many candies the machine dispensed, by morning, its glass dome was full again. At first, she chalked it up to a trick of the mind. Perhaps she hadn't been paying attention. But that same night, after locking up, she emptied the dome herself, pouring every last gumball into a tin bucket. She carried the bucket to the back room, stuffing it into a cupboard and locking the door for good measure. The next morning, the dome was full again. She froze, staring at the machine as a chill crept up her spine. The polished surface seemed to shimmer under the dim shop lights, the coin slot almost beckoning at her. Her hand reached out, trembling slightly, but she pulled back at the last second.
"Just my imagination,"
she whispered, trying to steady her breath. But deep down, she knew better. That night, she left the shop lights on. Meanwhile, the rumors reached further than the town, carried by concerned whispers and unsettling reports. Parents spoke of children drenched in blood that wasn't theirs, of panic attacks and hallucinations. The stories of missing children and bizarre deaths eventually caught the attention of the SCP Foundation. One crisp morning, two men in dark suits entered the shop. Their voices were calm, their questions pointed. They introduced themselves as government officials conducting a safety inspection. We've heard reports of strange occurrences linked to this machine, one said, his eyes fixed on the vending contraption. The shopkeeper's wife hesitated.
It's just a candy machine,
she said weakly, but her voice faltered. The whispers had kept her awake for nights, and the memory of the refilled dome haunted her. The men exchanged a glance. We'd like to take it for further examination, the other said, for public safety. Relief and dread warred within her.
Take it,
she said quickly, almost too eagerly. The Foundation agents moved with precision. A containment team arrived within the hour, disassembling the machine piece by piece. Despite its mechanical simplicity, the process was far from ordinary. The polished exterior resisted their tools, the lever locked stubbornly in place until they used specialized equipment to disable it. As the machine was packed into a reinforced crate, one agent held up the base, revealing the inscription. Try something different today, sweet and candy red. The phrase dripped with irony, given the chaos it had caused. The shopkeeper and his wife were escorted into a back room. Their memories of the machine, the candy, and the horrors it had unleashed were erased with a simple injection. They would wake the next morning with only a faint sense of something missing. The machine was transported to a secure Foundation site, its mysteries far from solved. Researchers marveled at its infinite supply of candy, its indestructible mechanisms, and the faint hum it emitted in the quiet of the observation chamber.
Where did it come from?
One researcher mused aloud, staring at the refilled dome. No one answered. The machine sat silent, its polished surface reflecting the sterile lights of the containment room. For now, it was contained. But as the whispers began to creep through the facility's halls, one thing became clear. This anomaly, now formally designated SCP-942, was far from finished. The machine, now officially labeled SCP-942-2, was wheeled into a reinforced chamber under the watchful eyes of armed guards and nervous researchers. It sat in the center of the brightly lit room, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. For weeks it remained still, silent, and yet undeniably ominous. Researchers set up constant surveillance. Cameras captured every angle of the machine, but it offered no answers. The dome refilled itself each night with the same crimson-tinted candies. There was no observable mechanism, no hidden compartment. The candies simply appeared. One researcher stared at the monitor, their voice tinged with unease.
It's like it's taunting us.
Another shrugged, trying to mask their own nerves. Or just showing off. The candies, now designated SCP-942-1, were subjected to rigorous analysis. Their composition seemed ordinary at first. Sugar, artificial flavoring, food dye, but their effects on living subjects told a much darker story. D-Class personnel were brought in for testing. Each was handed a single candy, instructed to consume it, and monitored closely. The first subject popped it into their mouth, chewing slowly. At first, their expression brightened.
Tastes amazing,
they murmured, a faint smile tugging at their lips. But within moments, their demeanor shifted. Their hands trembled, their breathing quickened. They clutched their head, muttering incoherently. Then, the screaming began. Get them out, the researcher barked, but it was too late. The subject collapsed, convulsing violently before falling into unconsciousness. The pattern was clear. SCP-942-1 wasn't just candy. It was a weapon, disguised as a treat. Despite strict protocols, curiosity proved to be a dangerous weakness. During a routine experiment, one researcher, fatigued and frustrated, decided to taste SCP-942-1 themselves. Whether it was a lapse in judgment or an act of defiance, the result was the same. The moment they bit into the candy, their eyes widened. At first, they seemed fine. Then they weren't. Their breathing turned erratic. They clawed at their arms, leaving deep red streaks as they screamed about shadows moving in the corners of the room. They stumbled into equipment, their voice rising in hysteria.
They're watching! They're everywhere!
They shrieked before collapsing onto the floor, twitching and muttering incoherently. The incident left the observation team shaken.
That's why we have protocols,
the lead researcher said coldly, though their voice betrayed a hint of fear. The researcher was sedated and taken for observation. Their prognosis was grim. Weeks turned into months, but the Foundation's brightest minds were no closer to understanding SCP-942-2. The machine's ability to replenish candy remained a mystery. It defied every attempt to probe its inner workings. X-rays showed nothing unusual. Attempts to dismantle it were met with failure, as tools shattered against its metal frame. SCP-942-2 remains contained in its reinforced chamber, monitored day and night. The candies are carefully cataloged, each piece treated as a potential threat. Researchers continue their experiments, but the anomaly remains an enigma. For now, SCP-942-2 sits silently, its polished surface reflecting the sterile glow of the lab. The candies inside gleam invitingly, their crimson hues promising sweetness and something far more sinister. Whatever its purpose, one thing is certain. This machine, with its endless supply of SCP-942-1, is determined to make dentists and therapists rich. It's still there, lurking in the corner of his eye. The driver can't bear to look at it. His hands tighten on the steering wheel. His breath quickens, but he doesn't dare glance back. He tries to avoid the sight, averting his gaze from the rearview mirror. Every flicker of movement at the edge of his vision sets his pulse racing. It's been the same all week. No escape, no reprieve, no moment of peace from the specter that seems to be following him everywhere he goes. He can't even tell anyone about it. They'd think he was crazy. He's starting to think they might be right. All he can do is tell himself it's just the guilt, the weight of what happened pressing down on him. He's still in shock from the accident that happened the week before. He's convinced it'll go away with time. Won't it? Yet every time he looks, the driver sees it. The sign lingers, hovering like a shadow that won't let him go. At first, it was subtle. Just a glimpse in the wing mirror when he pulled over outside work or stopped at traffic lights. He thought nothing of it at first. Just a stop sign, one of thousands, unremarkable and easy to ignore. Until he began to see it everywhere. Always behind him, flickering into existence where it hadn't been just moments before. What seemed like tricks of the mind start becoming a looming, uncomfortable image. It couldn't be someone messing with him, right? No one had been there that night. He was certain of that. No one had seen him. He hadn't meant to. He was just so tired. Working late, his eyelids had drooped for what felt like only a second, maybe two. Trembling as he closes in on the intersection, the driver takes a fearful glance at his rear view, expecting to see the sign closer than ever. But it's not behind him anymore. It's in front. He slams on the brakes, foot crashing down with the force of a cinder block. The tires shriek against the pavement, and the car jolts to a violent, gut-wrenching halt. The foreboding sign looms ahead, its four-letter command offering a painful reminder of what he should have done on that night. The driver swears he can almost see a figure standing next to it and squints to look closer. Is that... It can't be. It's either his mind playing tricks on him, or it's a vengeful spirit. Either way, it's drawn his focus for a second too long. The horn of the oncoming truck is deafening, but the driver hears it too late. Too late to react. Too late to stop what's coming. The impact shatters his car's windows, sending a shower of glass through the vehicle. In seconds, the car has been flipped. Pain shoots through every part of the driver's body as he dangles upside down in the wreckage, still buckled into the front seat. His vision blurs, and the darkness starts to claim him for the final time. Through the shattered windshield, he stares at the spot where he swore he saw it, the sign telling him to stop. He doesn't stay alive long enough to realize there's never been a stop sign at this intersection. Sometime in late 2019, Wilma Greggs vanished from work, right in the middle of an ordinary day. Her sudden disappearance left more questions than answers. As her manager, Lisa, scrambled to track her down, she began piecing together fragments of Wilma's recent behavior. Odd changes, subtle but unsettling. The moment she realized Wilma was missing, she attempted to get in contact with her via text message. She empathized with the recent difficulties that the woman had been experiencing, but reminded her that she couldn't just abandon work on a whim. Wilma responded, telling her boss she'd forgotten to call and that, as soon as she got home, she had passed out owing to exhaustion. This was the initial indicator for Lisa that something wasn't right. Wilma's car was parked outside the office. When informed of this, Wilma responded saying that she had walked home. Her house was situated 12 miles from her workplace, a 5-hour walk. and Wilma had walked the entire way. Naturally concerned, Lisa questioned her over this. If her car wasn't working, Wilma could have asked one of her colleagues to drive her or taken public transport, but Wilma explained that her car was working fine. It wasn't that the vehicle had broken down, it was that she couldn't drive it, because there was a stop sign in her car. Wilma was compelled to do what it told her, so she obeyed. She stopped using her car entirely. Growing increasingly concerned, Lisa offered to come and take Wilma out for the evening. She offered to cover the cost of whichever restaurant they went to. They could even walk in the park if it would be of help. Wilma refused, and at Lisa's insistence, she told her boss she couldn't leave the house. There was a stop sign outside her window. She couldn't go outside. Out of worry for her friend and co-worker's mental state, Lisa attempted to call Wilma to talk to her directly. The call was immediately rejected. Wilma went on to explain that she couldn't make phone calls either. Lisa tried to get her friend to open up to her, aware that she'd been overworking herself, possibly to cope with, or to avoid coping with, what she was going through. But Wilma responded saying that she still couldn't answer the phone. A stop sign had told her not to. Earlier that day, while still at the office, Wilma had exited her cubicle to get a cup of coffee. Hearing the phone ring, she quickly returned, expecting to answer the call to a customer as normal. But when she came back, there was a stop sign by her desk. Seeing the sign had forced her to leave work, and having seen the same stop sign so many times throughout the day, Wilma had become convinced it was haunting her. By this point, Lisa had realized that Wilma could have been on the cusp of a serious mental breakdown, possibly owing to the stress and grief she was going through. Instead of making an issue out of her leaving work, Lisa was determined to help. She filled out a 30-day leave of absence form for her coworker. All she needed was Wilma's signature. Maybe some time away from work to process everything would make a difference to Wilma, and her erratic behavior would stop. Wilma only agreed to sign the slip if Lisa came to her, which her boss was happy to do, until Wilma urged her not to visit. She'd changed on a dime. The stop sign was at her front door now. No visitors. Thomas would agree with her. She had to follow traffic laws. At the mention of Thomas, Lisa asked Wilma if she had told William yet. She said that she would, after William's birthday. A short while later, Craig Dillard, an employee of Tillman Funeral Home and Crematory, handed over his letter of resignation to his boss. In his letter, Dillard explained that he was, and always had been, a devout and pious follower of the Christian faith. He believed that over the course of his career at Tillman Funeral Home, he was doing a good job. He'd taken pride in handling the bodies of the deceased with care and took preparing them for burial seriously. Dillard had always believed that taking on a job like this one was good for his soul. Craig Dillard had believed that by helping men and women say their final goodbyes to their loved ones, guiding them from the world of the living to the gates of heaven, he would be seen as virtuous in the eyes of God. But suddenly, he no longer believed. He thought he'd received a sign from the Lord to give up what he'd dedicated decades of his life to. While preparing the body of a recently deceased crossing guard for burial, Dillard turned around and froze. A sign loomed over him, stark and foreboding, as he checked the body for signs of decomposition. In his letter, Dillard reflected that in life, the man had directed traffic on the roads, and in death, he had guided the course of Dillard's own life choices. He declared that if God had given him a sign to leave his occupation for good, he had to listen. A sign telling him to stop. On October 4, 2019, a writing assignment was handed in by a student at Wellington Elementary School. The students had all been instructed to write a short piece introducing themselves and describing something of interest that they had seen. One of the students, 6-year-old William Greggs, turned in his assignment to his teacher, Mrs. Pollock. In it, William talked about his parents, his mother Wilma, and his father, Thomas. When describing the cool thing he'd seen for the assignment, William recounted finding a stop sign in a room at his family home. It had seemed, to the child, that the sign was looking directly at him. Every time William entered a room at school, the stop sign would be there, waiting for him. He couldn't explain how, but he started to believe it was moving freely whenever he wasn't looking directly at it. In his assignment, William described the object as a kind of guardian angel, one that seemed to exist solely to protect him from danger. Though he wrote in his assignment that it didn't stop bad guys being bad, he also mentioned wishing that the stop sign had wings so that it could make cars stop. William talked more about his dad, Thomas, who had worked as a crossing guard. The sign that Thomas used didn't have wings, but it did tell cars when to go and when to stop. Thomas also had a really loud whistle. William remarked that he thought his dad looked cool and recalled a time when Wilma had driven them past Thomas's post. His dad had spotted them and waved, his smile beaming through the busy intersection. William loved his dad. William mentioned that he hadn't seen his dad in a while and wondered where he might be. It just so happened that the day William wrote the assignment was his birthday, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the stop signs appearing in rooms around the school were his dad's doing. He imagined it was all part of a playful joke, a way for his dad to make him laugh even when he wasn't around. But it wasn't just at school. William wrote that he'd even seen the stop sign in his bedroom at night. He ended the assignment saying that when he next saw his dad, he planned to give him the biggest hug. On September 30th, 2019, a clerk at South Palm Beach County Courthouse, one Frank Smith, was pulling out of his driveway ready to depart for work. As he reversed, his rear bumper hit something, denting it. He'd checked his rearview mirrors and was sure there hadn't been anything behind the car. Looking again, Frank could see nothing. Whatever it was had vanished. Later, several of Frank Smith's neighbors made non-emergency calls to local police after witnessing him sprinting out of his home, screaming into the night. Over the phone, one neighbor had reportedly heard Smith screaming, "Leave me alone! Please! I didn't mean to!" Believing there to be some kind of domestic disturbance occurring at Smith's property, a wellness check was made by police officers. A statement was taken, and Smith explained that he had woken in the dead of night to see something standing over him. On October 2nd, only a few days later, another unusual incident was reported from South Palm Beach County Courthouse. During the working day, employees at the courthouse witnessed Frank Smith rushing out of the staff bathroom with his work pants around his ankles. He was noted as being in hysterics and yelling incoherently about not being able to go in peace and that someone wouldn't leave him alone. Shortly after the incident, Frank Smith received an official reprimand for indecency. 2 days later, Frank Smith was found alone in a courtroom half an hour before a case that he was overseeing. He seemed to be speaking to someone or something he perceived to be sitting in the judge's seat, presiding over the empty courtroom. Smith prostrated himself before the vacant seat and appeared to be begging for forgiveness. Upon his discovery by colleagues at the courthouse, Smith fled the premises. No one saw him again, until a traffic collision later that day. While driving, Frank Smith had abruptly stopped his car at an intersection, right in the path of another oncoming vehicle. The resulting collision claimed his life. The reasons for his erratic behavior and that of Wilma Greggs, Craig Dillard, and William Greggs has all since been attributed to the same anomalous occurrence. Each of them had encountered SCP-5842. The SCP Foundation has documented all known sightings of SCP-5842 and have determined that they have been isolated to a single area, 66 miles north of Miami, Florida, within West Palm Beach, Palm Beach County. SCP-5842 is only known to have appeared in the village of Wellington, Florida, and the Foundation has already implemented a cover story that these were the result of a practical joke, as a way to avoid any suspicion arising among local residents. However, the area remains under Foundation surveillance in case additional sightings are made. SCP-5842 appears to be a standard North American stop sign, having an octagonal-shaped face, red with a white border and white lettering. Nothing visually distinguishes it from other non-anomalous traffic signs. However, its primary anomalous property has been ascertained from various incident reports. The object appears to be able to disappear and reappear in locations via unknown means. Initially, researchers at the SCP Foundation believed the appearances of SCP-5842 to be random. It was noted that the anomalous stop sign bore some resemblance to another anomaly. So, an investigation was launched to determine whether or not there was a connection between them. SCP-1047, also known among research staff as the vengefully ironic street signs, are a collection of traffic signs that each possess anomalous properties that correlate to the specific orders given by each one. Among them are SCP-1047-1, a one-way sign that has been observed to reorient the force of gravity in the direction of the arrow on the sign. SCP-1047-3 is a no parking sign that causes any living being within its radius to be in constant motion and unable to stop. An anomalous merge sign, SCP-1047-4, forces all vertebrate creatures nearby to spontaneously bond together, forming one composite being. Another instance, SCP-1047-5, is a sign urging to yield, in its case making anyone near it to become subservient to anyone that offers them a direct command. And SCP-1047-6 is a speed limit sign with a denomination of 55 miles per hour. This causes the speed of light in the surrounding area to be reduced to this specified speed of 55 miles per hour. There does exist, within the collection of vengefully ironic street signs, another anomalous stop sign referred to as SCP-1047-2. When exposed to this sign, any living vertebrate will suffer an instantaneous and irreversible state of total bodily paralysis. SCP Foundation anomalous research teams were initially convinced that SCP-5842 was some as-yet unseen variation of the numerous instances of SCP-1047. However, its anomalous functions seem to be considerably different to that of SCP-1047-2 and almost closer to that of SCP-1047-5, the anomalous yield sign. Based on the various eyewitness accounts of SCP-5842, this anomalous stop sign could compel them to stop and reconsider their actions. In the case of Wilma Greggs and Craig Dillard, encountering SCP-5842 affected their behavior to such a degree that they acted largely out of character, abandoning their jobs after witnessing the anomalous stop sign. According to the text message logs recovered from Wilma Gregg's phone by the Foundation, the anomalous influence of SCP-5842 was potent enough to compel her to act against her usual behavior. This included walking 5 hours to her home from the office rather than taking her car, deliberately avoiding roads, and sticking to public sidewalks and footpaths. Heading to the village of Wellington, Florida, Foundation research teams attempted to gather more information about SCP-5842. Conducting covert interviews with local residents didn't provide much in the way of results. However, one researcher Quadraginta, seemed to quickly determine a possible reason as to why. Up to this point, the Foundation had been treating sightings of SCP-5842 as if it were another instance of SCP-1047, not as a potentially entirely separate anomaly that might have its own mode of operation. In short, it was an altogether different type of anomalous road sign. Adjusting their approach, the SCP Foundation accessed historical road maps of the local area from multiple years and cross-referenced the placement of stop signs. The goal was to determine whether SCP-5842 had manifested in the past or been documented in any official road surveys conducted in Wellington. This began a laborious process of inspecting each stop sign location within the village against the locations on road maps of the area. Researchers found that almost all the signs on their maps corresponded to a real sign, each had its exact location listed, except for one. A single stop sign was found missing from its designated location, a discrepancy that stood out, as it was consistently recorded on Wellington's road maps. Even the oldest available maps of the area, dating back to the earliest records of modern roads, indicated its presence. This suggested that the sign had existed for as long as the local road network itself. The site of the missing sign itself appeared to have sustained damage during some kind of accident, so the Foundation queried this with local traffic police. They were able to confirm that an incident had occurred on September 27, 2019. The sign had been damaged and removed as a result, pending replacement. The Wellington Police Department also reported another unusual incident 1 week later. A local courtroom clerk inexplicably stopped his car in the middle of an intersection, directly in the path of oncoming traffic, despite there being no stop sign present at the location. That proved to be the crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Taking another look at the eyewitness reports of SCP-5842, researcher Quadraginta was able to make sense of it all. There had been no appearances of an anomalous stop sign prior to the incident mentioned by the Wellington Police Department. The road maps of the village confirmed that. Now that they knew what had happened in Wellington just before SCP-5842 started appearing, Quadraginta realized that the sightings hadn't been random at all. They'd been connected. Having determined exactly what was going on, researcher Quadraginta and the rest of the Foundation team concurred there was little they could do. After implementing the cover story, they somberly departed from Wellington, leaving the anomaly uncontained. The last known sighting of SCP-5842 occurred sometime after October 4, 2019. It was witnessed by a groundskeeper at the South Florida National Cemetery who saw the anomalous stop sign leaning over a tombstone. Before disappearing,
It had seemed to be severely dented and damaged. Since vanishing, there have been no subsequent sightings of SCP-5842. The tombstone where the stop sign was last seen bore a simple inscription. It read, Thomas Greggs, October 4th, 1990 to September 27th, 2019. Loving husband and father.
It's a quiet morning in Lego City until the robbery begins. Clients of Lego City's First National Lego Bank barely notice at first as men in dark suits with plastic black masks covering their faces slink into the room from every conceivable entrance and exit. When these same 10 sinister Lego strangers all pull out guns, everyone pays close attention. "This is a robbery," their leader says while firing his gun into the air. "We don't want any heroes. If you try to disrupt our operation, we'll blow you into bricks." The patrons hit the ground, cowering for dear life, as 5 of the masked robbers approach the tellers with open bags, and the other 5 work crowd control, pointing their weapons at the cowering civilians. These men are hardened Lego criminals. If something goes south, they won't hesitate to start blasting. "Empty your vaults, lady," the leader says to one of the tellers. "We ain't messing around. We'll ice everyone in here." But the teller doesn't follow his orders. Instead, she reaches under her desk and presses a tiny red button hidden from sight. Suddenly, the room erupts in red flashes and alarms as the bank's security system activates. Robbers and hostages alike feel themselves beginning to panic, but the leader, he stays cool and still. Less than 10 seconds pass before the alarm stops. You could hear a pin drop in the room. Locks deactivate and shutters roll back up. The teller is confused and horrified. What happened? Little does she know, in a van parked outside, an 11th member of the Lego robbery team is working on a sophisticated computer setup. He's hacked into the bank's security system, and he's been able to both shut down the alarm system and intercept the message that goes out to the local police precinct. The plan is unfolding perfectly. "Nice try," the leader says, and shoots the Lego teller dead. Everyone in the room, including the other Lego robbers, gasp. Nobody is prepared for things to get this ugly this quickly. "Anyone feel like helping me out here?" the leader says. "Or am I going to need to start wasting more tellers?" The surviving tellers read the message loud and clear. They open up the vaults and begin wheeling out stacks of Lego cash, which the robbers begin stuffing into containers and duffel bags. In total, they steal over 2 million Lego dollars. Each member of the team is going to get a hefty payout. With the mission completed, there's no sense in hanging around. They need to hop into their Lego getaway cars and be out of there before the Lego cops show up. But by the time they're leaving the bank, it's already too late. Lego cop cars are tearing down the street towards their parked getaway vehicles. It doesn't make sense. Their operation was perfectly planned, military in its precision. The whole thing had been over in less than 3 minutes. How are the cops on them already? But none of them have time to think. The cop cars screech to a halt, and armed officers start climbing out, training their guns on the gobsmacked team of Lego robbers standing in front of the bank.
"Freeze! Put down the weapons in the bags, or we'll be forced to take action!"
A Lego cop screams over a Lego megaphone. The only reply they get is gunfire. The leader levels his Lego gun and starts blasting, taking out 2 cops and forcing the rest to scramble for cover behind their vehicles. Taking advantage of the moment of opportunity, the robbers scatter like cockroaches under a newly lifted rock. Most make it to their cars, but in the confusion, the Lego police are able to return fire. One of the robbers, the tallest but slowest of the hardened criminal team, goes down in a hail of bullets. Another one of the robbers, who'd been his friend, screams in rage and turns his gun on the police, firing like a madman, not even caring if he hits his target. A conveniently placed police sniper in the building across from them wings him with an expert shoulder shot that drops him to the ground, alive but too injured to escape. He's nothing but dead weight now. The remaining 8 robbers pile into 3 Lego getaway vehicles, 2 classic cars manned by getaway drivers, and the van where the team's elite Lego hacker had been doing his high-tech work. Now, their job is a lot more simple. Get out of here without getting caught or killed. Immediately, the chase spills out onto the streets. They'd planned for this possibility. After completing the job, they'd each head to 3 different pre-designated safe zones, so if one was followed, they wouldn't implicate the others. The plan is complicated by seemingly having every single one of the city's cops on their tail now. Contact between the 3 vehicles immediately breaks down. The leader of the robbers is in the fastest of the getaway cars, with 3 others, the driver, the rookie, and the old-timer. Behind them, scores of Lego police cars surge through the streets. Armed officers hang out of the passenger doors, opening fire on their escape vehicle, hoping to hit them or at least pop the tires.
You want to play rough, huh? The leader says to his panicking fellow criminals. We'll show them how to play rough. The leader and the old-timer grab a pair of Lego submachine guns that are lying across the floor of the car. They lock and load before leaning out of the car windows to return fire. If they're going to go down today, it's going to be in a blaze of glory, not bruised and humiliated in a holding cell. You'll never take us alive, coppers! The old-timer barks as he and the leader open fire on their pursuers. It's a parabolic hellstorm, skittering bullets across the hoods of the police cars behind them. The windshields of even Lego police cars are reinforced to take this kind of punishment, but not for long. Soon enough, the surge of cars is buckling under the weight of fire from the leader and the old-timer. Cars are crashing into each other and piling up as the criminals take off. What should have been a simple robbery is quickly spiraling into a nightmare for all involved. The death toll is already in the double digits, and the chase goes on, with frequent gunfire exchanged between the Lego robbers and their Lego boys in blue pursuers. Above all this, above the chase, above the gunfire, above the robbery, two almost godlike giants stare down on the whole chaotic display. These godlike giants are, in fact, a pair of young boys aged 8 and 9. Less than an hour ago, these boys were just bored kids who'd run out of games to play on their Xbox. They had decided to go a little retro and switch up the Minecraft for a classic box of Lego. One of the two young boys remarked, "I think my dad has a big red box of Lego in his office. He probably won't mind if we use it." Of course, what the boy didn't know was that his father wasn't, contrary to his own belief, an accountant who worked in the city. He was actually a mid-level researcher working with the SCP Foundation, and quite the workaholic at that. He had a tendency to bring his work home with him, metaphorically, and in the case of some safe-class SCPs, when given the proper clearances, literally. One such SCP was SCP-387, the living Lego, a toy that genuinely has a mind of its own. While completely inert and seemingly normal inside their red box, when removed and even partially constructed, the Lego comes to life and begins playing out its roles, from planes to tanks to hospitals to war zones. And these Lego creations are extremely committed to their parts. After finding the box, the young boys did what all children do when they happen upon a box full of Lego. They started building. And thanks to their vast juvenile imaginations, it didn't take long for them to construct an impressive Lego city in the living room. But a standard city full of Lego running smoothly is no fun. The boys needed to introduce a little extra excitement to the proceedings, like, say, a team of bank robbers. The one thing the two young boys don't expect is for the bank robbers, when introduced to the city, to start independently planning and executing a heist on the city's biggest bank. Still, there are worse ways to kill a rainy Sunday. Back on the ground of the Lego City, the other getaway vehicles are running into trouble. The other car had initially managed to pull ahead from the police, but while trying to cross a bridge, it runs into an unexpected roadblock. Literally, the Lego police have built a roadblock on the other side of the bridge, and now it's too late to reverse.
Open fire!
An enraged Lego police captain yells to his assembled squadron behind the barricades, and they raise the guns, and do so. Lego bullets pepper the getaway car. They can't drive through the barricade. All they can do is make a sharp left turn and hope to avoid the onslaught. Instead, they smash through the Lego barricade and tumble off the bridge. The car sails into the freezing Lego River, where the sudden cold paralyzes the robbers and the getaway driver inside. They go into shock and drown moments later. Across the Lego City, the van containing the hacker, the getaway driver, and another robber had somehow blended in with the traffic and has managed to escape the relentless police chase. Everyone inside the van breathes a sigh of relief, knowing they've already done better than most of their fellow criminals tonight. If they manage to make it through, there will be much to celebrate. For them, the next stage of the mission is clear. They need to make their way to a warehouse in the industrial district, their designated drop-off area, where they could hide their stolen money and disappear like leaves in the wind. They've already been through the hard parts, the planning, the robbery itself, the shootout, and car chase with the police. They're out of the woods now. Or so they thought. When they arrive at the warehouse and drive inside, parking their van, they immediately realize that something is off. But by now, it's too late to do anything about it. They suddenly hear footsteps and the screech of tires as heavy police tactical vehicles squeal into the warehouse all around them, boxing them in. Lego SWAT team operatives climb out of each vehicle and train their weapons on the trapped van. One of them yells, "We have you surrounded! There's no way out! Drop your weapons and surrender if you want to walk out of here alive!" And so, with no other options, this is exactly what they do.
When they exit the vehicle with their hands behind their heads, the Lego SWAT team tackles them and claps cuffs around their wrists. They'll likely be spending the rest of their lives in jail for this fiasco, but at least they get to live. Across the city, only 4 members of the robbery team remain alive and free. The leader, the old-timer, the rookie, and the remaining getaway driver, all of whom narrowly managed to escape the extensive police detail following them. It had been a mix of skill and blind luck. The leader knows that one thing about this whole situation has nothing to do with luck. With all the planning they'd been doing and the disabling of the bank's security system, how had the police been on them so fast? There's only one logical answer. They'd been set up. One member of the team was secretly working with the Lego City police, and they'd sold the rest of them down the river. The leader doesn't know who specifically ruined this entire operation like that, but he intends to find out, and when he does, he's going to make them pay dearly for their betrayal. But for now, he stays quiet. He doesn't want to show all his cards before they made their way to the safe house, if it was even safe anymore. Still, they'll deal with that problem when they get to it. After a tense 10 minutes of silent driving, they reach the planned rendezvous point, another warehouse in the city docks, built against the section of blue carpet that the young boys who made this world intended to represent the ocean. Here, they'd wait for a speedboat chartered by their employers to pick them up and their ill-gotten gains. If they survive that long. The getaway driver parks the car out of view in the abandoned oceanside warehouse, and the criminals inside pile out, breathing carefully and stretching their little Lego legs. There's tension in the air, and of course, it's the leader who breaks the silence.
"Someone here hasn't been entirely honest with us,"
he says, taking out his Lego handgun.
"There's no way the cops could get on us that quickly if they hadn't been given some kind of tip."
Another grim silence falls over the room. The old-timer, the rookie, and the getaway driver share a suspicious glance. Who among them could be the imposter? The daring escape they'd managed to perform no longer gives them comfort. The millions of dollars in the trunk of their little Lego car may still be forfeit if one of the people in this warehouse is a police informant. The silence is once again broken by the leader, who raises his weapon and shoots the getaway driver dead. The rookie and the old-timer are horrified by the seemingly callous and random display of violence.
"What's wrong with you?"
The old-timer barks. The rookie chimes in with, "What made you think he was the mole?" The leader just laughs, his weapon still raised, its barrel drifting back and forth between the old-timer and the rookie. His indifference to violence frightens them. He seems unpredictable and dangerous.
"No reason," the leader says. "He'd already done his job. We don't need a getaway driver anymore. And getting rid of him narrows down my options. Which one of you squealed on us?"
The rookie pulls out his own gun and aims it at the leader. The old-timer follows suit, not wanting to be left out. They now have a full-on Mexican standoff on their hands. Only the leader seems unfazed. The rookie says, "If what you say about there being a squealer is true, how'd you know it'd be one of us, not someone from the other teams?" The leader shrugs.
"I can't know for sure, but I'm not going to take any chances."
He levels the gun at the rookie and prepares to fire, when suddenly a nearby window shatters. It's the police. Their little internal dispute would have to wait if they wanted to keep a single Lego cent of the money they'd stolen. Heavily armed Lego police officers bust open the door with a battering ram, while others climb through the windows. It's another classic ambush. The leader and the old-timer turn their guns towards the invading Lego cops and start firing wildly, shooting some and scaring away others as they run towards the car. They can't escape here without the money. If they don't bring the money, then all this chaos was for nothing. The leader runs across the warehouse, narrowly dodging the hail of Lego bullets firing all around him, and skids to a stop behind the getaway car. Even with gunshots ringing out from every direction, the leader keeps his cool and reaches into the car. He manages to find the largest duffel bag and slings it over his shoulder. Even if he doesn't get all of the money, he can run away with most of it when that chartered speedboat arrives. Nobody involved in this even notices when the roof lifts entirely off of the warehouse. The 2 huge young boys stare in from above, curious about where the story is heading down below. They're here just in time to see the tense shootout continue as the desperate leader pops out from his cover and returns fire against the advancing line of police. The old-timer tries his best to hold his own, holding a gun in each hand and firing wildly, but his recklessness soon catches up with him. Outnumbered, the cops with Lego shotguns and assault rifles unload on him, leaving him every bit as dead as the getaway driver. Ducking away to avoid the same fate, the leader notices something. The rookie is nowhere to be seen. Not dead, just gone. He knew it. Of course the rookie had been the mole all along. He should never have trusted the little creep. It had been a perfect plan, and he'd ruined everything. Over the din of gunfire, the leader hears something else.
A boat motor. It's the chartered speedboat, his ticket out of this nightmare of bullets and broken promises. He might win after all. He turns and sees the speedboat entering the submerged part of the warehouse, just out of view of the police strike force. It would be a risky move, but he knows he can make it. He doesn't have any choice. Throwing caution to the wind, the leader turns and runs towards the boat, dodging every bullet that the police fire at him. He's doing it. He's doing it. He jumps into the boat, and the boat takes off, speeding away from the warehouse. He laughs in crazed relief, still lugging the duffel bag full of money off his aching shoulder. He's out. He's home free. Until a giant hand from above descends and grabs his Lego boat. He's lifted up and thrown back into the red box he was originally taken from, while the two young boys start taking apart the rest of the Lego city and tidying it back into the box too. "My dad'll be home soon," one of the young boys says. "We better clean up before he's back."
Tell me if it starts to hurt, the dentist says before reaching into your mouth with a pair of orthodontic pliers and starting to pull your front teeth back into place. Evidently, your screams aren't enough of an indication of the extreme pain you feel because he doesn't stop pulling. After what feels like hours of excruciating oral surgery, you're finally standing outside the dentist's office texting with a friend. "Come on, show me. It can't be that bad," reads the message from your friend. You're nervous to send her a picture, though, since you have a small crush on the girl and you don't want her to see you in this state. But after she asks you again, you decide to take a quick selfie and send it to her anyway. You snap a photo of your mangled mouth and jaw. The mess of wires had to be hastily applied to move your remaining crooked teeth back into place with globs of fast-hardening epoxy, and the result looks like a low-budget horror movie prosthetic. You send the message and wait. You watch the dots appear that indicate she's writing a response, then watch as they disappear without a reply. You sadly slip the phone back into your pocket and begin walking away. As you make your way home with your head hung in shame, you keep your mouth shut tight. You don't want any passers-by to see what you've become. You decide to detour through the park to avoid any people as much as possible, and as you walk, you decide to stop at a picnic table next to a small pond. You sit at the table and watch the ducks mill about in the water. They have it so lucky, you think. Ducks never have to worry about their teeth getting knocked out by a baseball and leaving them looking like a monster. The ducks suddenly all start moving away from your side of the pond, eventually taking flight and leaving completely. You get the sense that they're trying to get away from something, and you turn around, but there's nothing behind you. Oh, it must be me, you think. But then you get the sense that there is something behind you, and turn again. Still though, there's nothing. It's just you, the picnic table, and the empty pond. You turn back to watch the still water, but you can't shake the feeling that there's someone behind you, and turn again. "Hello? Is anyone there?" you ask, but no one answers. You turn back to the pond and you scream in fright at the thing standing before you and fall back off the picnic table. You get up out of the dirt and you don't wait to stick around to see who or what this thing is. You start to run as fast as you can, but you immediately hear it chasing after you. Instinctually, you take out your phone and start trying to take pictures of whatever it is that's behind you. You know no one will ever believe you, and you want some evidence of this thing. You manage to snap off a couple of pictures, but you can hear the creature gaining on you. You scream as your mouth begins to ache. Perhaps running this soon after your surgery is causing your damaged teeth to shift, and the pain is intense. It starts to feel like your mouth is full of jagged rocks, but you can feel that it is your teeth pushing out and stabbing into your mouth. You take one last picture before the creature leaps on you, sending you both to the ground, and your phone tumbling into the dirt. Early the next morning, a police perimeter has been set up in the park. The detective arrives and walks past the traumatized-looking jogger who must have been the one that discovered the grisly scene. An officer guarding the site lifts up the police tape so the detective can enter the crime scene that surrounds a body lying under a white sheet. The detective asks the officer if they've found anything yet, and the officer hands the detective a plastic bag containing a dirty cell phone. The detective puts on a latex glove and removes the phone from the bag. The screen is cracked, but it still works. There's numerous messages on the screen that look like they're from someone trying to apologize for not responding sooner, and asking where the phone's owner is and if they're mad at her. The detective opens the phone's camera app and starts looking at the last photos that were taken. It's a strange series of pictures. They seem to all be selfies that a young man was taking as he ran through the park. It almost appears as though there's a figure behind him, but it's hard to tell. There's a foggy white vignette on the pictures that gets worse the further he looks, slowly closing in until the last photo is nothing but a blurred milky white screen. The detective flips the phone over and looks at the lens, which you can see is completely covered in a hard white substance. The detective places the phone back in the evidence bag and kneels down next to the body. The police officer turns away. He's already seen the victim and doesn't need to again. The detective pulls down the sheet to reveal a truly shocking sight. The boy's mouth is a mess of teeth, far, far too many teeth. There are teeth growing out of every part of his gums at horrible angles, filling his mouth and jutting out at painfully odd angles. Who could have done this? What could have done this? The local police department may not have had any idea what the state of this victim meant, but the SCP Foundation did, because they had seen the same occurrence dozens of times before. In fact, they had seen it happen so many times that they had classified this anomalous entity as SCP-4910, but it had already earned a much more ominous nickname within the Foundation. It was known as the Grinner. Very little is known about SCP-4910, and eyewitness accounts of the creature are all extremely brief due to those who have interacted with it quickly succumbing to its effects. What is known is that SCP-4910 is a quadruped and appears to be made partially, or perhaps entirely, out of teeth. Those who encounter SCP-4910 quickly experience its primary anomalous effect, which is that it causes the extremely rapid overproduction of teeth in its victims' mouths. Existing teeth will quickly increase in size, protruding farther out of the gums than should be able, while new teeth will begin to sprout from any available space in the mouth, including the roof of the mouth and underneath the tongue. These new teeth will completely fill the mouth, which almost immediately inhibits their ability to speak or vocalize at all. The creature will then use this opportunity to attack and incapacitate the victim before starting to feed. Further adding to the mystery of SCP-4910's appearance comes from the effect it has on any nearby recording equipment. Cameras and other devices that come within SCP-4910's proximity will have their critical components compromised by a sudden appearance of a layer of dentin, which is the calcified material that partially makes up teeth. Interestingly, SCP-4910 seems to possess some level of intelligence, as it appears able to differentiate between normal civilians, who it hunts for sustenance, and members of organizations that seek to hunt down and contain or harm it, which it uses for an even more nefarious purpose. While the exact mechanics are still unclear, it seems as though SCP-4910 is able to infect certain anomalous organization members with its ability, causing them to act as a vector for the effect, who then spread it to even more victims. This effect is, of course, of great concern to the Foundation, and containment protocols for infected victims have been hastily put into place. Should a member of staff begin bearing a grin with too many teeth or multiple tooth-filled smiles, they are to be immediately immobilized by any means necessary, though preferably with a firearm that allows one to keep an appropriate distance and hopefully prevent any further spread of the effect. The infected individual is then to be doused in a hydrochloric chemical compound that will reduce the afflicted to a pulp-like substance. Once this pulp is no longer animate, it can be transferred to the closest incineration site for disposal. Should a member of personnel have an interaction with SCP-4910 and feel that they were exposed to its anomalous effects, they may be saved by taking immediate medical action. Oral surgery to remove the additional teeth has been found to be effective when the procedure is undergone in the first 1 to 2 hours following exposure, though the victim will suffer lifelong permanent physical issues from the procedure. Once 3 hours have passed, the effect will have spread to the rest of the body, with teeth appearing virtually anywhere. Unfortunately for the victim, should the infection reach this point, pain management has been shown to be ineffective, and there is nothing that can be done to alleviate their suffering, save for termination. SCP-4910 remains at large and has been given the Keter classification. Mobile Task Force Epsilon, codenamed Turfing Black, is the only MTF authorized to respond to sightings, and they have been given permission to engage the creature and utilize lethal force if necessary, due to the danger this anomaly presents specifically to the SCP Foundation.
An empty bottle shatters against the ground, sending shards of glass across the tarmac. The teens, fueled by adrenaline and cheap booze, are having a wild night, and it's just getting started. After getting booted from the local arcade for causing a scene and grabbing some greasy budget burritos from a local Mexican takeout joint, their journey led them here, the local park. For the 2 high school seniors, the playground equipment was the perfect canvas for their artistic vision. They laughed as they planned the graffiti and lewd sketches that would cover the slides and monkey bars by dawn. But before any of that can happen, a wave of childhood nostalgia washes over them. Why not go on some of the rides, for old time's sake? It's not like anybody would ever know what they did here tonight. And they're right, in the worst way possible. Little do they know, something extremely dangerous is lurking. Something that wants to cause them terrible, terrible harm in a way that, even after it happens, they'll never truly understand. By morning, as the first rays of sunlight glint off the dew-soaked grass, it becomes clear the teens never made it home. Their panicked parents call the police and register their concern. This isn't like them. They never stay out this long. The search begins. Calls go out to local radio shows and TV stations. Concerned citizens staple missing posters to telephone poles. By evening, the streets and nearby woods are filled with volunteers, walking in lines, clutching flashlights, calling out names into the approaching darkness. The police bring in the usual suspects, locals with a criminal history that indicate they might be a danger to local teenagers, but it doesn't turn up any meaningful evidence. Meanwhile, halfway across town, a cleaner employed by the local council sweeps up the glass from the broken whiskey bottle at the playground. As the mother watches the cleaner dump the broken glass into a garbage bag, her little boy is playing on the jungle gym with his friends. The mother's hand snakes towards her pocket, then stops. She fights the urge to reach for the pack of smokes, worrying what the other mothers will think of her if she does. It's been a stressful month, the latest of many. She doesn't have time to worry about anything else. Hell, she hasn't even heard about the missing teens.
Mommy, look how high I can climb!
She forces a smile as she watches her boy reach the top of the ropes. That smile almost becomes genuine when she sees how happy her son looks. And then her phone starts to ring. It's him. Again. Her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, if he'll ever actually accept the divorce papers. She sighs and walks away from the playground for a moment. She doesn't want their son to hear them having another long-distance shouting match. When the humiliation ritual is over, she returns to the playground. Only something's wrong. She notices it immediately. Her son isn't there. She feels the panic pierce her chest in that instant, but tries to keep her composure. She asks one of the other mothers what happened, and they seem just as confused as her.
I think he just went down the slide,
one of them says.
I wasn't looking, I'm sorry,
says the other. The fear is impossible to suppress now. The mother screams her child's name, but there's no response. She climbs up the wooden structure and looks down the shaft of the metal tube slide. It's empty. Her voice echoes down as she calls the name again and again. Her horrified screaming just pours out the other side. Soon enough, one mother's panic infects the entire town. 3 missing people in 12 hours? 2 teens, 1 child? Could there be a kidnapper on the loose? It doesn't take the papers long to start running with it. Police search every inch of the playground, the fields beyond it, and even the nearby forest, but they don't find anything. The mother gives her statement to the police, and soon after, her estranged husband is also brought in for questioning. It soon goes from local news to national syndication. Extra police are soon sent in from external departments to widen the search, as phones within tens of miles of the incident give the frightening buzz of Amber Alerts. The first 24-hour window is the most important, but as the hours draw on, the hopes start to dwindle, and the local police precinct is starting to catch flack for their ineptitude. One person who isn't getting that same blowback is the mother. Soon enough, she's America's favorite terrified mother. Her email inbox is full of tabloid newspapers and online outlets begging for exclusives. They want to know how she's feeling right now. Does she have any theories as to what happened? Is there anything she'd like to say to the man who presumably has her son locked up in some basement compound? The mother is part of every search party, every night. She tromps through the undergrowth, shouting her son's name. But soon, the tone of the search starts to change. Police and search parties stop walking through forests and knocking on doors. Instead, they start trawling riverbeds and digging through gravel pits. Nobody says it, but the subtext is clear. They're not looking for a little boy anymore. They're looking for his body. Little by little, even the most ardent supporters start to peel away. It's not exciting anymore. It's grim and depressing. But even that isn't nearly as awful as what's about to happen. Slowly, at first, And then, with all the speed and intensity of an avalanche, the media and then the public begins to turn on her. The headlines go from being kind and sympathetic to indifferent description of just how long the fruitless search has gone on, to active cruelty. Doesn't the mother seem like she's taking all of this too well? Doesn't she seem a little suspicious? The headlines are the lit match thrown into the tinderbox. The conspiracy theories start flying online. Internet sleuths intent on getting to the bottom of this, to finding a more believable angle. They unpack the details of the case in the most unfavorable light imaginable. Did she smile during that press conference? There must be some kind of ulterior motive here. There must be some secret underneath the surface. And as you'll find out later, there is. Just not the one anyone here would expect. The mother is still getting hundreds and sometimes thousands of messages every day, but the tone of these messages has changed with the media's depiction. I know what you did, you monster. You can't keep getting away with this. How can you live with yourself, killing your own little boy? Did you dig a big hole for him, lady? I'm gonna dig a bigger one for you. But the messages aren't nearly as chilling as the maniacs who show up at her house. It starts with shadows, figures moving through the bushes at night, barely visible in the glow of the porch light. Then come the sounds, the dull thud of rocks against the siding, the occasional crash of something heavier smashing against a window. In one instance, someone even shot at the facade. When the police came over to investigate, she sensed an undertone of, "Everything always happens to you, doesn't it?" underneath the sympathetic smiles. Her car has been ruined by horrific graffiti multiple times. The tires slashed, the windows cracked, the doors keyed. Every single way that a person can suffer an indignity, short of physical violence, she seems to be suffering it. She even sees YouTubers and podcasters hiding in their cars, filming her as she takes out the garbage for B-roll in their documentaries about her perceived wrongdoings. She cries too much. She doesn't cry enough. Don't her eyes look like a murderer's eyes? But she'll even take all the pain that comes with being awake over the horrors that invade her dreams. Well, it's only ever one dream, actually. She's there on the day that her boy went missing, standing with the other moms at the edge of the playground, watching her little boy. Except in the dream, nobody has a face. They're all blank and smooth, with voices that sound like muffled nonsense. Her son calls out to her, and then, at the exact same time that it did in real life, her phone starts to ring. It's her husband again, her soon-to-be ex-husband. As though trapped by the certainty of the past, she steps away and answers the phone, moving liquid slow. Her husband's voice comes through the microphone next to her ear in an eerie monotone. "Why aren't you watching our boy?" She turns and sees him gone. Not just him, but everyone, as though she's completely alone in the world. She dashes over in a panic, though to her, that dash is in torturous slow motion. The words of the other mom ring with haunting clarity in her ears. "I think he just went down the slide." In a blur of panic, she scrambles into the slide, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her hands slip on the smooth plastic, her knees banging against the sides as she crawls forward. But this time, she doesn't see the faint light of the other side, just an all-consuming darkness yawning before her, pulling her in like a void. She doesn't stop to think. That's when she hears it. "Mommy!" His voice. It's faint but unmistakable. She needs to keep going, but inside, the slide feels like a desperate and terrible infinity, endless loops in cold, dark metal. Every time she feels like she's getting close to seeing her son again, he gets just a little further away. Then, everything slips out of reach. She bolts upright in bed, gasping for air, her nightshirt clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. The slide. She knows she has to go back. It's not just a dream. It's something more. A pull she can't explain. The slide. She has to go back to the slide. And that's what she does. That night, she goes back to the playground, still cordoned off with police tape fluttering in the breeze. She ducks under the cordon, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. She stands at the base of the slide, staring up at its hollow, gaping entrance. Her breath catches as she takes the first step, her fingers curling tightly around the metal rungs. They feel cold in the damp night air. She pauses at the top, and then summoning every ounce of courage, she throws herself forward, face first, her arms pinned tightly at her sides. The world blurs as she hurtles downward, the slide pulling her in faster than it ever should. And then, she's somewhere else. The throat of a deep cave, in complete darkness. The walls and ceiling close in tightly around her, the hard rock pressing against her body. She can't move, can't even wriggle her arms loose. She screams into the void, but the sound feels swallowed, crushed by the suffocating darkness. There's no echo, no sense of space beyond the tiny prison she's trapped in. She now knows what happened to her son. She just can't save him, or herself. To someone claustrophobic, what I just described is probably worse than an eternity in hell, but that's simply par for the course when it comes to SCP-1562, also known as the Carnivorous Slide. An anomaly where the questions it raises are every bit as unsettling as the few answers we have regarding its nature. To the untrained eye, there's nothing amiss about this particular anomaly. It's a metal tube slide, 11 feet long, 3.4 meters, and 7 feet high, 2.2 meters, part of an otherwise completely non-anomalous playground in a location that, for your own safety, will remain undisclosed. There's a good chance that even if you use the slide, you may not fall victim to its anomalous effects. That's because these effects are only activated when someone uses the slide in a very particular way, namely, sliding down it on their stomach, face first, with their arms at their sides. When this condition is satisfied, the victim will disappear at some point during the slide, vanishing without a trace. To this day, despite the Foundation's best attempts to capture the phenomenon, it has never been directly observed. I cannot stress enough that this is very much a one-way trip, too. Nobody who has gone down the slide and disappeared has ever been recovered. Even when the Foundation has sent D-Class personnel down the slide with a tether attached to their bodies, the tether has been mysteriously cut when the person disappeared. All of this begs the unsettling question, where are all these people going? The best that the Foundation can estimate on this is that it's an extra-dimensional space, which has largely been described as an extremely cramped, cave-like environment where light ceased to work and mobility is extremely limited. Due to the position that victims are in when the anomalous effect takes place, they're rarely even able to move their arms. While here, beyond even experiencing the natural fear one would logically feel in this situation, they feel the sudden onset of panic and paranoia as their situation deteriorates. There have only ever been 2 Foundation experiments conducted on SCP-1562 before testing was suspended indefinitely. In the first, a member of D-Class personnel was tethered and sent down the slide, at which point he promptly disappeared, severing the tether. However, the long-range communication device left with the D-Class still worked. From his new location, he was able to describe not only the dark and cramped locale, but something wedged in the tunnel in front of him. He described a tiny shoe, like that of a child, laying in the tunnel in front of him. He also heard a voice talking and telling him to stop crying, even though he wasn't. When asked to describe his situation, he said,
I'm still headfirst on my stomach and my body's at an angle, but I'm in some sort of small tunnel and I'm stuck. I'm completely surrounded by rock or dirt on all sides. I don't have enough room to raise my head or move my arms, and I can't move forward. I really want to get out of here now.
Of course, there was no way for the Foundation researchers to get him out. Instead, they asked him about the other person who seemed to be trapped in there with him. The D-Class said,
He just kept asking where he was, and I told him I didn't know. But I don't think he was really talking to me because he didn't respond to my voice, and he told me to stop crying when I was actually sort of calm.
They then asked him whether the other person seemed to be moving.
I don't think so. He started crying and asking for his mommy, then
he finally stopped, and shortly after that, you contacted me again.
Please get me out now. Please hurry, my chest just
Communication cut at this point, much to the distress of everyone involved. In response to this incident, another test was approved, this time using a member of D-Class personnel who has a smaller stature. The logic being that a thinner man might be more mobile in the enclosed space of SCP-1562's anomalous area, allowing for further exploration than the previous test subject. However, despite the difference in size, this D-Class seemed just as trapped and enclosed as the first. He reported the same disappearance of all light, the same shortness of breath, the same dirt and rock, the same tiny shoe just in front of his head. But then he started hearing a voice, one very familiar to the Foundation researchers, echoing from the dark. It was the voice of the previous D-Class. And it wasn't just his voice. He was saying everything that he'd said during the previous test at exactly the timings that he'd said it, as though someone was playing back a recording. Soon after, the voice stopped. The second D-Class's transmission was cut not long after, his last recorded words being,
"Oh, thank God for that. I was starting to think that..."
He was never heard from again. In light of this development, the lead researcher in the case, Dr. Carver, suspended all testing. To do any more would simply repeat the same result and sacrifice more lives to the Carnivorous slide. These days, the slide is quarantined in Testing Lab 46-V in Site 24, kept away from the public and from dangerously curious Foundation researchers who might repeat certain old mistakes. When you've done this job for long enough, you realize that sometimes not having an answer at all is kinder than knowing the awful truth beneath it all.
A young man and his girlfriend enter the apartment they share. She tosses her keys on the entryway table as the man checks the time on his phone. He reminds the young woman that they will need to leave soon if they don't want to miss the movie they have purchased tickets for. The woman agrees, but she wants to take a quick shower before they leave. As she goes to freshen up, the man sits down at his computer to get in a quick round or two of his favorite online squad-based first-person shooter. He puts on his headset and jumps into a game. Before he knows it, he's just finished his third round. He checks the time on his phone again and realizes that they were running late. He takes off his headphones and is confused when he hears what sounds like the shower still running. He gets up and goes to the bathroom door and listens. The shower is definitely still on. The man knocks on the door and asks if everything is all right. He waits a moment, but there's no response. He knocks again, and still nothing. She doesn't usually take showers this long, and he immediately worries that she might have passed out or, well, he doesn't even want to think about it. "I'm coming in, okay?" he announces as he opens the door to check on her. The man immediately notices how steamy the room is. The hot water must have been running for a while, and he's worried she really did pass out from the heat. "What's going on? Are you okay?" he asks, and when there's no response again, he pulls open the shower curtain to find nothing. Just an empty tub. There's no sign of his girlfriend anywhere. The man is beyond confused. He turns off the water and goes to the bedroom, but she isn't in there either. He runs to the front door, but it's still locked, and her keys are sitting on the table. He unlocks the door and sticks his head out into the hallway anyway, but nothing is out there. What is going on? He checks the bedroom again, then the bathroom, but she hasn't suddenly reappeared in either. He's in complete shock, unsure of what could be happening. He sits down on the toilet and puts his head in his hands. His head is spinning as it feels like the world is suddenly falling down all around him. The police are immediately suspicious of the man's story. His girlfriend simply vanished while taking a shower? "You expect us to believe that?" the detective asks. The man has no answer, though. It's as if she simply blinked out of existence. He's convinced she must still be in the building somewhere, that she somehow slipped out without him noticing. But none of the security footage from inside the building shows anything abnormal. There's footage from the cameras in the lobby of them entering the building, but nothing after that of her leaving. Just as in every missing person case like this, the boyfriend is the #1 suspect. But without any evidence, they can't hold him any longer. After many long hours of interviews, they finally allow him to leave, but not back to the apartment, since it's an active crime scene. The man has no family to speak of, and his few friends seem to have the same suspicions as the police and want nothing to do with him. His girlfriend was the only person he truly had in the world, and now she's gone. He's put up in a shabby motel, and days pass, then weeks, then months, but no evidence of the missing woman ever turns up. The man replays the memory of that day over and over in his head, searching for some kind of answer, but try as he might, he can't remember anything helpful, no clue as to what could have happened. The case is completely cold, and has been from the very start. The police eventually have to move on to newer, more solvable cases, and they finally allow the man to return home. He's overwhelmed with emotion the first time he enters the apartment. The place is a mess. It looks like the police turned it inside out looking for clues. Not knowing what else to do, he starts the long process of cleaning up the apartment. After hours of putting things away, he eventually gathers the strength to go to the one room he's been avoiding, the bathroom. He opens the door to the last place he's certain his girlfriend was. He enters to find that it looks like the rest of the apartment, as if someone has looked at every single object. But just like him, the police never found any trace of where she went. After straightening up this last room, he decides that he should take a shower and go to bed. It fills him with dread to think about standing in the last place he knows where she was. But he's had months to grieve the loss of his girlfriend, and he's decided that he needs to move on, whatever that means when someone goes missing without a trace. He turns on the shower and lets the water heat up before stepping in. Once he's in, every thought he has is about her. He wonders if she ever actually got in the shower at all, or somehow used it as a diversion to slip out unseen. He just can't figure out how. The day's events race through his mind, just as they have 1,000 times before, but his thoughts are interrupted when he notices that the water has started to pool around his feet. He looks down and sees that the drain cover looks normal. Maybe there's a clog, though. Do showers clog when they're not used? He has no idea. He bends down to get a closer look. The long black creature emerges from the drain in the blink of an eye and latches onto his mouth, muffling him before he even has a chance to scream. He struggles and pulls down the curtain on top of him as he falls back onto the shower floor. But it's already too late. And in a matter of minutes, he too will be gone without a trace. Is there anything more comforting after a hard day than a nice, long, hot shower? The answer to that is no, there is nothing better. But that relaxing shower might just be the last you ever take when, unbeknownst to you, your pipes are home to an instance of SCP-153, also known as drain worms. SCP-153 refers to a species that resembles the common nematode, or roundworm, consisting of a long, thin body with a large mouth on one end. While some roundworms can grow to as large as a meter long, which is in itself a disturbing thought, SCP-153 instances can be much, much larger, and it is estimated that they can reach up to nearly 10 meters in length, though it is hypothesized that some instances in the wild may grow even longer. These worm-like creatures will feed off of any available organic material. However, their favorite form of sustenance is fresh animal tissue, and they appear to have an especially strong predilection towards human flesh. In order to satiate their desire to feed on their preferred prey, SCP-153 has developed a rather unique predatory style that perfectly suits its elongated body structure. While it is unknown just where they originate, they are most often found in the pipes of sewer and drainage systems. 153 instances will swim up those pipes, seeking out ones that lead to people's homes, and especially those that connect to showers and bathtubs. Once they reach the end of the pipe, SCP-153 will latch onto the drain cover and begin secreting an acidic substance. The acid quickly dissolves the drain cover, and SCP-153 will position its own mouth in its place, which it then is able to camouflage as the missing drain cover almost perfectly. Once SCP-153 has taken this position, it is virtually impossible to distinguish it from the original or discern that anything has changed. SCP-153 will then lie in wait until it detects that someone has entered the shower or bathtub. Once the unsuspecting person has begun to bathe, it will very quickly emerge from the drain, latching onto the victim's face, most likely in order to prevent them from calling for help. It then begins to rapidly secrete more of the same acid that it used to dissolve the drain cover. With how effectively it was able to dissolve metal, it's no surprise that SCP-153 is able to quickly produce the same effect on its victim. Their skin, muscle, and bone will all be almost immediately liquefied, allowing SCP-153 to feed on the slurry, and the drain worms feed extremely quickly as well. After just several minutes, basically nothing will remain of the person who stepped into the shower, and 153 will retreat back into the drain, leaving no signs that it was ever there, save for the missing drain cover. The SCP Foundation became aware of this anomaly following multiple mysterious missing person cases that all had one key element in common. Each was reported as having disappeared after entering a bathroom to either shower or take a bath. The Foundation soon discovered that large populations of SCP-153 instances were living in the sewers beneath several major American cities, and immediately began enacting containment procedures. The Foundation collected as many specimens as they could, and brought them to Bioresearch Area 12, where they keep them contained in 10 by 10 by 5 meter tanks that are kept partially filled with sewage and other organic material for them to feed on. Of course, it is of the utmost importance that these containers are never connected to any other plumbing systems, either internal or external. With several specimens contained, the Foundation began researching the creatures in order to hopefully better understand them and how they were able to develop such complex hunting techniques. Research was also approved to find out whether they could be used as a sort of waste disposal system in certain extreme circumstances, such as with SCP-2717, a mass of living animal tissue that has grown to line nearly 4 kilometers of sewer pipes beneath Amsterdam. A small number of SCP-153 instances were approved for release into the wild in order to test whether they could stall the spread of 2717. However, this experiment was halted following some disturbing new reports. More missing person reports came to the Foundation's attention that bore the hallmarks of an SCP-153 attack, but these new reports were not limited to people who vanished after bathing. It now appears that SCP-153 has further adapted and has begun to emerge not just from showers and bathtub drains, but now also from sinks and, yes, even toilets. The Foundation is unaware of just how many instances of SCP-153 continue to exist in the wild, but there's no doubt that many continue to live and hunt undetected in sewers around the world. This anomaly, which has been classified as Euclid, is taken very seriously by the Foundation, and any reports of people who go missing from bathrooms are immediately investigated for signs of SCP-153. Field agents are to be equipped with infrared and ultraviolet sensors which can bypass SCP-153's camouflage, and if specimens are able to be captured alive, then they are to be brought to Area 12 for further research. But don't bother worrying too much the next time you step into the tub. If you've been targeted by SCP-153, there's not much you'll be able to do anyway, and your worries will soon be going down the drain, along with whatever remains of you.
2 teenagers cautiously approach an old, decrepit house. The house looks like it was built hundreds of years ago, and from the outside, it appears to be in a serious state of disrepair. The walls are cracked and weathered, the roof looks to have holes in it, and one of the decorative columns has completely collapsed. The teenagers have heard rumors about this dilapidated home, though, and they have heard there are riches still to be found inside. One of the teens starts walking up the stairs onto the porch, but his friend seems reluctant to follow. Is he sure that no one lives here? The braver of the teens tells his friend that he's been watching the house for days and hasn't seen anyone come in or out. The only signs of life have been a very faint light visible between the cracks of the house's boarded-up windows, and he's not even sure if he actually saw any lights or not. If there is anyone in there, it's just some crazy old person. They can easily scare them off and loot the house at their leisure. His friend still doesn't look sure, but the other teen proceeds to take out a lockpick. He tells his friend to keep a lookout while he works on the door. He doesn't need to keep watch for long, though, since the lock almost immediately opens with a loud click. He opens the door carefully, but it still squeaks loudly. Through the crack, he can't see much of anything inside. It looks very dark. "Come on," he tells his friend as he slips inside. His friend looks nervous as he watches his friend disappear into the house. Suddenly, there's a loud crash. "Oh no, we've been caught," he thinks as he spins around. But he doesn't see a police officer coming to arrest them or a nosy passerby. Instead, he watches as a cat chases a rat into some trash cans, knocking more of them over. He breathes a sigh of relief as he watches the cat come out of the pile of trash, holding its prey limply by the tail. He turns to follow his friend into the house, but is stopped when the door snaps shut in his face. He tries the doorknob, but it's locked. He taps quietly on the door. No response. He taps a little louder, whispering, "Hey, what's going on?" But still no response. What is going on? Inside, his friend is also pulling on the doorknob, but it's no use. The door won't budge, and the lock won't turn. He also tries tapping lightly on the door, but there's no signs from outside that anyone has heard him. He's trapped. He looks around the darkened room. Just like the outside, the interior looks like it hasn't been updated in hundreds of years. Dust and cobwebs are everywhere, like no one has set foot inside in decades. And yet, on several small tables and shelves around the room, are lit candles. With no other option, he decides to move deeper into the house. He creeps into the next room, which is in much the same condition as the first, dusty and old, but with several candles placed around that give off just the faintest amount of flickering yellow light. Not only does someone still live here, but they've lit these candles recently.
He takes a folding knife out of his pocket and opens it, holding the blade out in front of him. Just then, he hears something, a noise like footsteps, and it sounds like it's coming from upstairs in the room right above him. They might be coming down to look for him. He needs a place to hide. He spots a sofa near the corner and tries to get down behind it as much as possible. As he grips the edge of the sofa with one hand, he suddenly drops his knife to the floor and uses his now free hand to stifle a scream. He looks at the hand that was just gripping the sofa and sees a long sewing needle plunge deep into his hand. Was this stuck into the couch? He pulls the needle out of his hand. It nearly went all the way through, and holds the bloody wound up to his mouth, trying to stop the flow of blood as he waits and listens. The sound of footsteps finally stop. Whoever is walking around, it doesn't sound like they're coming down the stairs to find him. He has to get out of this house, though. There must be another way out. He picks up his knife and quietly moves to the next room. Once again, it's in the same condition as the last. But wait, what's that in the corner? Is that a person lying there? Outside the house, his friend is looking through the same trash that he saw the cat hunting in. Aha! Just what he was looking for, an old wire hanger. He runs back to the old house, untwists it, and inserts the thin wire into the lock. Inside, the trespassing teen gets closer and closer to the thing in the corner. It's so dim, though, with the only light coming from the candles, that he still can't make out what it is. But he feels strangely compelled to find out. He picks up one of the candles off of a nearby table. Outside, he still can't get the lock open, but he's got to keep trying. He can't leave his friend trapped inside. He's standing right over the thing in the corner now. He kneels down and brings the candle close to see what it is, and screams. His friend throws down the hanger in frustration before sitting down on the porch. He can't figure out why his friend was able to open the lock so easily, and now it won't move. Did something in the mechanism break? He doesn't know what he's going to do, though. Should he call for help? The police will arrest them both if he does. How long should he wait, though? It feels like his friend has been stuck for a long time, and he hasn't heard anything from inside. What could possibly be happening in there? Should he just leave and hope that his friend is able to escape on his own? Just as he is wondering what to do, he hears a click behind him. He turns around and tries the door handle, but it's still locked. He looks down and sees the wire hanger. Maybe he'll give it one more try. He sticks the hanger into the lock and hears the lock pop open almost instantly. He tries the door handle, and this time, the door swings open. He stands there looking through the cracked door into the dark house. He's terrified at the thought of going inside, but he can't leave his friend in there. If he's in trouble, then he has to save him. Gathering up all of his courage, he enters the house and sees the same thing his friend did, a dusty old room. He takes a step into the candle-lit room and freezes. There's something in the middle of the room. It's a chair that's turned away from him, but he can see that someone is sitting in it. But wait, is that his friend? Hey, he calls in a loud whisper, but his friend doesn't respond. Come on, let's get out of here. Still no response. He starts walking toward his friend, but stops when he hears what sounds like footsteps coming from the room above him. He's got to get his friend and get out of this house. He checks over his shoulder to make sure the door is still open before starting to quietly move towards his friend again. He's close enough that he can reach out and shake his shoulder, but his friend doesn't react. He walks around to the front of the chair and sees his friend. Except it's no longer his friend. Staring back at him are two empty eye sockets. His mouth has been pulled back by stitches of thread into a horrifying permanent grin. But worst of all is what he hears. It's the sound of the front door slamming shut. Privyet! Today's file is a special one and comes from the Russian branch of the SCP Foundation. It's SCP-1098-RU, also known as the Theater of Living Puppets. SCP-1098-RU is a two-story house located in a small Russian city which appears to have been constructed in the Baroque style, which was popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, and is characterized by its exuberant details. The house is likely several hundred years old and is in an advanced state of disrepair. The local government administration has marked the house for demolition multiple times, but for reasons that remain unknown, these plans are always scrapped or indefinitely delayed. All of the doors that lead into SCP-1098-RU are locked, and the windows are all boarded up. Anyone who attempts to damage the house, even just by removing the boards from the windows, will experience an odd anomalous effect that compels them to instead protect the structure and cause it no harm. This effect only wears off when the subject moves at least 50 meters away from the house. The only way to enter SCP-1098-RU is through the front door, which, even though it is locked, is easily able to be picked open, which causes no harm to the house and prevents the anomalous effect from overcoming the subject trying to gain entrance. Once someone has entered the house, they will find that the door closes behind them and locks itself. The lock cannot then be picked open again for 1 hour. The interior of the house matches the exterior stylistically, also appearing to have been designed in the Baroque style and in a poor condition. The house is quite dark since there are no electric lights present, and all of the windows are boarded up, blocking any outside light. The only illumination comes from the lit candles that are placed around the house, which appear to be constantly replaced and lit again when they burn out. The sound of slow footsteps can be heard inside the house, though the room they are coming from seems to change. The entity producing the sounds has been classified as SCP-1098-RU-1, and it is thought that it is also responsible for the placing and relighting of candles around the house, as well as several other anomalous effects. The Russian branch of the SCP Foundation first became aware of potential anomalous activity related to SCP-1098-RU after the disappearance of multiple teenagers was linked to the location. In interviews, many of their friends and family reported that their last known locations were near the site of the old Baroque-style home, and several had expressed a desire to investigate the house before they disappeared. Local police investigated the house, which only led to them disappearing as well. After learning of the strange activity connected to the house, the Foundation took over the investigation, planting a cover story that totalitarian sects were responsible for the disappearances, while Class A amnestics were administered to all relatives of the missing teens. The Foundation immediately began investigating the house, but carefully, since they had already seen how easily people could go missing inside. In the first excursion into the house, a remotely controlled robot fitted with a camera was sent inside. Just like when a person enters, the door closed and locked behind the robot, but its camera feed continued to broadcast images to the researchers outside. As the robot explored the rundown house's rooms, it found something much more disturbing than just lit candles. In several of the rooms, corpses were discovered, which were later identified as being some of the missing teenagers. All of the bodies found had their eyeballs removed, and thick threads had been sewn into their arms and legs, as if they had been turned into giant living puppets. Some of them also had stitches in their chest and face areas. The face stitches appear to have been made to force the face to have a certain expression, while the chest stitches may indicate that organs had been removed. No signs of decomposition were present, though, despite some of the bodies likely being many months old. Several objects were also found next to the bodies, including surgical knives, needles, thread, and at least one artificial eye. Exactly 1 hour after the robot entered the house, the camera ceased broadcasting images and all contact was lost. For the second excursion into the house, the Foundation decided that a human being would be more effective at gathering information than a robot. A Class D personnel was given a flashlight, a camera, and a radio, and sent on a mission to attempt to remove objects from the house and to locate the robot from the first research mission. The D-Class entered the house, and researchers noted that from what they could see on the video feed, that the layout of the house hadn't changed. Candles were still present around the room, though it was clear that they had been replaced by fresh ones. As the D-Class explored the first floor of the house, he reported that he could hear footsteps coming from different parts of the house, and on one occasion, that they sounded like they were coming from a room he had just left. But when he returned to that room, no one was present. He wasn't able to locate the missing robot, but did find the same corpses that the robot had. He was ordered by the researchers to pick up one of the surgical knives and try bringing it out of the house, but the moment he picked it up, all contact was lost. A third mission into the house was then tried, this time with another remotely controlled robot, though this one was more advanced and equipped with a thermal imager and audio recording equipment. This robot was also better suited for exploration and was capable of climbing stairs so that the Foundation could finally find out what was on the second floor of this strange house. The robot entered the home and ascended to the second floor. As it explored the rooms, it found one particularly strange one that appeared to be operating as a kind of sewing workshop, with huge amounts of thread, needles, and other sewing supplies spread across multiple tables. Dark red stains covered many of the tables, but no bodies were discovered in the sewing room. The robot continued to explore the second floor, though, and soon discovered many more corpses, accounting for nearly all of the missing teenagers, the police that had vanished, as well as the missing D-Class personnel. All of them had been dressed in 18th century style clothing, and their eyes had been removed and replaced with artificial ones, giving them a perpetual glassy-eyed stare. Long, thick threads had been sewn into their arms and legs as well. The sound recording equipment on the robot captured the same sounds of footsteps that the D-Class had reported, but the thermal imager didn't locate any signs of life. The researchers decided to call an end to the experiment and began guiding the robot back out of the house. But just as it reached the front door, the connection was lost, and the robot has never been located. One final expedition into the home was approved, this time using another D-Class personnel, whose mission was to explore the entire house, including the second floor, before attempting to leave the home. The D-Class entered the home as normal, but immediately reported feeling a strange feeling that the other D-Class hadn't mentioned. He told the researchers listening that he was experiencing an intense headache and pressure in his ears, and that he could hear what sounded like someone crying in another room. None of the equipment picked up the crying sounds, and the D-Class was ordered to investigate further. He approached the room that he claimed the sound was coming from, but still nothing was detected on the audio recording equipment. He was ordered to enter the room, and though he seemed scared and reluctant, eventually he did so. Once inside, he reported seeing a young girl wearing an 18th century style dress. The girl was dancing, but crying as she did so. Just like on the corpses that had previously been found inside the house, threads were connected to her arms and legs, but these ones were pulled tight and stretched up towards the ceiling. The D-Class followed their path up, but they disappeared into the darkness, reporting that it looked like there was no ceiling at all, just an inky black void where something was manipulating the strings attached to the girl, forcing her to dance. None of these visuals reported by the Class D could be seen on the video feeds the researchers were watching. As far as they could see, he was staring into an empty room. The D-Class was ordered to continue watching this strange recital, though, and after 5 minutes, all of the communication devices ceased working. The video feed was lost too, but the audio continued to record for a few more seconds, during which time a sharp clap noise was heard. The D-Class began screaming as a deep male voice spoke a phrase in Latin. Et perficiendi sit pretium. The performance must be paid for. No further signs of the D-Class were ever found. SCP-1098-RU has since been fenced off to prevent the general public from being able to enter it. A patrol team of 4 security guards is always on site, and anyone who attempts to gain entry to the house is to be detained, interrogated, and administered Class B amnestics. Additional research into SCP-1098-RU is ongoing, but requires approval from at least 2 members of the O5 Council, and to date, no further expeditions inside this anomaly, which has been given the object class Euclid, have been authorized. It is still unknown who or what exactly the entity inside of SCP-1098-RU is, but it has been designated as SCP-1098-RU-1, and some in the Foundation have taken to calling it by a nickname, the Master of Puppets.
You're on your way home from work after having just finished working a double shift. It's late, and the interstate is completely abandoned. No cars visible either in front or behind you. It's only about a 20-minute drive, but you know you're going to struggle to stay awake, even in this old beater that shakes and rattles as it travels down the long, straight road. The rattling causes a piece of tape to fall off of the gauge cluster, revealing a lit check engine light beneath. You grab the tape and put it back over the light, covering it once again. There, good as new. You turn on the radio, and it comes to life for just a moment before dying. You slap the radio and it blinks to life for just a second before dying again. You're about to slap it again when you notice lights in your rearview mirror. And more than just a pair of headlights. It's a whole wall of lights. They're getting closer, and quickly too. Before you know it, they look like they're barreling down on you. But then, they suddenly go black, blinking out of existence. Did that trucker just turn off his lights? You think. You have no time to dwell on the thought, because the sound of an explosion suddenly causes you to scream in fright. It sounds like lightning has struck just inches from your car. The inside of your car suddenly lights up with fire and smoke. Has your engine exploded? What's going on? No, it's not coming from you, it's coming from next to you. You don't know where it appeared from, but next to your car is now a massive semi. At least, you think it was a semi. The smoke is so thick it makes you cough, and you quickly can't see. You lose control of the car and slam on the brakes, but you can feel yourself going off the road. As the smoke finally clears up inside of your car, you can see the moon.
It's at this moment that you realize you're no longer right side up as the car flips and tumbles through the air. You open your eyes to find that you're still buckled into your seat. You release the seatbelt and drop to the roof of the car. You crawl out to find that your car slid to a stop upside down, several meters from the road. You look around, and far off in the distance, you can see it. The semi that ran you off the road, driving at an almost impossible rate of speed off into the night. You look back at your car, which is completely totaled, and wonder what you're going to do now. It's late the next morning when you finally get back home. The police did not seem to believe your story about the magically appearing semi-truck causing your single-car accident, but they did at least give you a ride back home after administering a sobriety test. You enter your small studio apartment and look around at the sparsely decorated room, wondering how you're going to pay rent next month if you can't get to your job. You go to the fridge and open the door, but there's nothing inside except for a carton of milk that's well past its expiration date. You open it and take a whiff, but this is too far gone even for your state of desperation. You close the fridge and lean on the door, trying to figure out what you're going to do. You're so deep in thought that you barely notice the mail being pushed through the slot in your door. You decide to go pick it up, even though you know it will only be bad news. And you were right. Bills, bills, and more bills. First, second, and final notices. You wonder if you've ever had a piece of good news show up through that slot in your door. What's this, though? The last piece of mail is a battered and folded envelope that looks like it's been used and repurposed many times. It feels thick and heavy, but there's no information on it at all. It's completely blank. You open the envelope, and your eyes light up. Inside is money. It's a stack of crinkled old bills, different denominations, all in a random order, but there's a lot of them. There must be over $1,000 here. And there's something else, too. A note. You unfold the creased and dirty piece of paper to see a simple message that looks like it was hastily written in black crayon. All the note says is, "Sorry about last night. Hope this helps, compadre." You flip the note over and look in the envelope again, but there's nothing else other than the wad of cash. The apology note may have been unsigned, but you weren't the first to receive something like it, and you would be far from the last. The SCP Foundation, though, knows exactly who sent it. This was a message from SCP-3899, also known as the Night Hauler. SCP-3899 is a black Peterbilt 379 semi-trailer truck with an attached trailer, but as you no doubt have determined, this is no ordinary truck. SCP-3899 has the anomalous effect of appearing seemingly at random upon stretches of highway within the continental United States, and usually at a considerable distance away from any other motorists. The truck will manifest already in motion, traveling within roughly 3 kilometers per hour of the posted speed limit, but it will not stay at this speed. Once SCP-3899 has appeared, it will almost immediately begin accelerating, and the speeds it can reach are truly staggering. Despite appearing to be a normal truck, SCP-3899 is able to reach impossibly fast speeds, and it's been observed traveling at over 420 kilometers per hour, or 267 miles per hour. As SCP-3899 flies down the road, it will attempt to avoid other vehicles and roadside objects, and has even been shown the ability to displace itself across short distances, which it seems to mostly do in order to avoid collisions with vehicles. SCP-3899 will disappear and then immediately appear somewhere else, though always within 300 meters of its last location. This reappearance will be accompanied by a thick cloud of dense, black smoke that lab tests have revealed to consist of a mixture of diesel fuel combustion byproducts, volcanic ash, and trace amounts of unidentified human blood. The anomalous truck will only appear at night and will demanifest completely once it encounters direct sunlight, or if it causes an automotive accident, which it has done plenty of times. In one particular incident, undercover SCP Foundation agents working within the Virginia State Department of Transportation became aware of reports of a large black truck appearing on a particular stretch of interstate that had caused multiple accidents. They were able to track down and locate one of the victims of these incidents, a woman named Martha Lewis, who they soon brought in for questioning under the guise of it being a police investigation. The agents questioned Martha on her experience, and she explained her own interaction with the black semi. She said, "It's all still clear in my head. I'm driving down I-64 on my way home and the sun had just gone down. There's no other cars and I'm about to take my exit when out of nowhere this huge truck just appears right next to me. There's a bunch of smoke, like it was on fire or something. and the sound was like a bolt of lightning had just struck right next to me. It all happened so fast. All the smoke clouded my windshield, and before I could really process what was happening, I was plowing right through a concrete divider and into some trees. I think I passed out. When I came to, there were paramedics and cops. They took me to the hospital. The agents asked if anything happened after that, and she said there was one other odd thing. When she left the hospital and went home, there was a letter waiting for her, but it didn't have a return address. Inside was a large amount of U.S. currency in a random assortment of denominations, with many of the bills appearing wrinkled and worn. There was a note in the envelope, too, which read, "I'm sorry, didn't mean no harm. For the damages, get y'all a new rig and drive on." Later Foundation analysis of the document revealed that the note was written with a piece of charcoal on non-anomalous notebook paper. Now you're probably asking yourself the same question that the SCP researchers had. Just who is the driver of SCP-3899 that apparently wrote this odd note and also paid for the damages they caused? The operator of the truck, which has been designated as SCP-3899-1, is a very mysterious figure. Observers who have been able to get a brief glimpse inside of the truck as it moves past them at a rapid speed have described the driver as looking only like a silhouette of a slightly overweight male wearing the type of headwear that is typically referred to as a trucker hat. Some reports have also alluded to the presence of what appears to be smoky, tentacle-like appendages within the cab, though all further efforts to determine the exact physical characteristics of 3899-1 have failed, as the truck has proved resistant to any kind of outside scanning equipment. Most of what is known about the driver has come in the form of direct communication, though not in the form of interviews or any other sort of face-to-face interaction. No, while SCP-3899-1 has never been willing to stop and have a discussion with Foundation agents, it does seem more than willing to speak with anyone and everyone in its immediate vicinity over Citizens Band, or CB radio, which is a type of shortwave person-to-person communication system that is popular with many long-haul truckers. In one particular instance, an SCP Foundation helicopter happened to be traveling above a stretch of road where SCP-3899 appeared. An agent within the helicopter began communicating with the anomalous trucker, first asking for their call sign, to which SCP-3899-1 replied,
"I'm a night hauler and I'm coming in hot. I know y'all can feel this speed."
After adjusting their volume to compensate for 3899-1's loud response, the agent asked if the entity could explain where they came from. 3899-1 answered with,
"I roll with the wind. My wheels sing sweet love to the blacktop.
I'm filling y'all's veins with road salt and exhaust and the smell of burning rubber. Ain't no bother where I'm from. We all gotta live for the ride and die for nothing."
"I see," the agent responded, before asking, "Are you hauling anything in particular?" SCP-3899-1 came back with,
"Ain't you listening, girl? You seeing this? What I got is pure rattling salvation.
18 wheels at a time. When y'all's roads is choked, when the ways is blocked and y'all's speed is all dead and gone, I'm dropping this load and we'll all be drinking gas and breathing smoke."
The agent didn't understand, though, and asked again who they were and what they wanted. 3899-1 replied,
"This is for the souls of the road, for the long nights and dead engines,
and everyone trying to put that horizon under their wheels. I am the roar of hot iron. I am screaming freedom. I am the death of all barriers. This rig ain't got no quit, honey. I do not stop. Can you feel the rumble?
Can you see the fire and smell the burn? I know you can. I can taste your heart and I know you want to fly apart with me."
When the agent began to answer in the affirmative that they could indeed, quote, feel the rumble, seemingly caught up in the excitement of SCP-3899-1's proclamation, the investigation was quickly halted and the helicopter broke off from its pursuit. Following this incident, the potential mimetic influence of communicating with 3899-1 is under investigation. SCP-3899, being currently uncontainable by any conventional means, has been classified as Keter. Upon reports of it manifesting, all CB radio transmissions emanating from the truck are monitored by nearby Foundation listening posts for attempted contact by SCP-3899 to civilian recipients. Any individuals who are contacted are to be administered Class B amnestics, as are any eyewitnesses of the truck itself. All information about SCP-3899 is to be suppressed, and a disinformation campaign is active to make all reports of a mysterious truck that can appear out of nowhere and move at impossible speeds seem like nothing more than an urban legend. Just what is SCP-3899? Is the driver some sort of anomalous ghost, or perhaps an old, eldritch god, a manifestation of freedom and perpetual motion given physical form as a diesel-powered behemoth on the highway? Perhaps the answer to that question is up to you.
A group of friends are driving down the highway late at night. They're on their way home from a concert, and after the long night of dancing and partying, all of them are feeling quite tired. The radio is turned off, and after so much loud music, the silence is refreshing. No one is talking at all, and in fact, the driver notices that both his girlfriend sitting next to him, as well as his friend in the back seat, have fallen asleep. The driver tries to make sure that he doesn't do the same as the car moves down the long stretch of straight, empty highway. The driver's eyes start to grow heavy, though. He can feel the weight of sleep starting to press on him. He turns the radio on at a low volume, but that only staves off the drowsiness for a moment. He can't fight the approach of sleep any longer, and his eyes start to close. As he drifts off to sleep, his foot presses down slightly more on the accelerator. The driver's head slumps to the side as the car gains speed and begins to pull to the right of where it crosses the white line, marking the edge of the highway. The tires dip off the road into the dirt, and the sudden change causes the driver to jerk back awake. He quickly swerves the car back onto the road. The sudden jolt causes both the passengers to wake up. Is everything okay? The driver tells them that he just swerved to avoid an animal in the road. That's right, nothing to be worried about. They can go back to sleep. As both of his friends close their eyes and try to go back to sleep, the driver spots something. Lights have appeared in his rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. He didn't notice a car pulling out or speeding up behind him, but he must have missed it when he was dozing off. His heart is still racing from when he drifted off the road, and he's trying to regain his composure, but it's about to get a whole lot harder, because when he looks in the mirror again, he sees that the telltale red and blue lights of a police cruiser have lit up behind him. "Oh crap, oh no," the driver says out loud. Everyone is awake now and aware of the cop behind them. They grow nervous and start freaking out. Not all the activities they had partaken in at the concert were, strictly speaking, technically legal in this state. "What do we do?" the driver asks. "You've got to pull over," says his girlfriend. The cop car's sirens come on. This is serious. But then something strange happens. They hear a voice in the car, coming over the radio. It's too quiet to hear, but when the driver turns up the volume, the message comes through loud and clear. It's a gruff voice that keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. "You better run." How is this message coming over the radio? They don't know, but the passenger in the back seat agrees with the voice. They've got to try and run. They have to get out of here. The driver's girlfriend is screaming to pull over. The cop car speeds up and is right behind them now, almost on their bumper, its lights flashing and sirens blaring. The driver doesn't know what to do. Should he pull over? Should he try to run? Everyone is yelling. He starts to push down on the accelerator, but then thinks better of it. There's no way this old car can outrun a cop. Finally, he makes the decision to brake and starts to pull the car to the side of the road. The police car comes to a stop behind them. The sirens are off, but the bright lights are almost blinding. They sit in the car and await their fate. But nothing happens. The car is just sitting there behind them. After what feels like a long while, the door of the cop car finally opens. The three passengers watch silently as a highway patrol officer steps out and begins approaching their car. The driver tells everyone to relax, that this is going to be just fine, but the passenger in the back starts to panic. He can't get arrested. If he does, it will mean that he loses his scholarship. He'll get kicked out of school. His whole life will be over. The highway patrol officer reaches the car. Despite it being late at night, he's wearing dark aviator sunglasses that cover half of his face. He stands in front of the door to the car and waits. The driver, feeling nervous and afraid, rolls down his window. The police officer doesn't move or react, though. He just keeps standing next to the car. Good evening, officer," the driver says. No response. The driver turns and looks at his girlfriend in the front seat, but all she can do is shrug. He turns back to the highway patrolman. "Did we do something wrong?" There's another long pause, but then the patrolman finally reacts. He bends over and leans in close, sticking his head practically through the open window and putting his tight-lipped face right next to the driver's. Do you want my license and registration?" the driver asks. The patrolman doesn't respond. He reaches up and slowly grabs the side of his dark aviator sunglasses. He pulls them down, and the driver finds himself staring into a pair of bright, red,
glowing eyes. Evil eyes. Everyone in the car starts to scream as the thing standing in front of them opens its own mouth to reveal a big, black, gaping hole with no gums or teeth, a horrifying void in its face that screams right back at them. As you may have already deduced, this was no normal traffic stop, and certainly not a normal highway patrol officer. No, the entity that this group of young adults encountered that evening was one that dozens before them had the same misfortune of running into, and one that the SCP Foundation is actively trying to stop from engaging in its frightening and dangerous behavior. This is SCP-973. SCP-973 is not one, but actually two separate entities. The first, designated SCP-973-1, is a police cruiser that appears to be a model similar to those used by actual state troopers during the early 1970s, and its condition is much like you would expect for a well-used, nearly 50-year-old vehicle, with much of it being in an advanced state of disrepair. Eyewitness accounts of SCP-973-1 have described the police car as having numerous dents on the doors and hood, cracks in the windshield, multiple rust spots, and a rear bumper that looks to be held on with duct tape. The vehicle's driver and sole occupant has been designated SCP-973-2. This humanoid figure has an appearance that resembles a Caucasian male in his late 40s. It is dressed in the state trooper uniform that, like 973-1, also looks to have come from the early 1970s. And eyewitnesses have described him as being slightly overweight, balding, and sporting a handlebar mustache. Both the anomalous car and its driver will appear at night in a specific location along a particular U.S. highway. It is unknown exactly what will cause SCP-973 to show up on this road, but Foundation researchers have hypothesized that its manifestation may be triggered when a vehicle accelerates over a certain speed. You may think you're safe, then, if you stay below a certain speed, but unfortunately, you'd be wrong. It's unknown exactly what speed limit infraction will lead to SCP-973's appearance, with reports ranging from 35 miles per hour all the way to 70. But when it does occur, the driver will find that they are now a target. SCP-973 will materialize roughly half a kilometer behind the targeted vehicle and will approach them at a high rate of speed. SCP-973-1 sirens will turn on and its lights will flash, as it also somehow broadcasts a message into the targeted car that is picked up on the car's radio, a message that urges the driver to run, often accompanied by several expletives. In most cases, the targeted vehicle will abide by the instructions over the radio and begin to flee, though it's unlikely that this is due to any mimetic effect. Rather, it would seem that most run out of pure terror. SCP-973 will then pursue the targeted car, leading to a high-speed chase. No matter how fast the targeted car is, though, the SCP-973-1 police cruiser will always be faster. And it typically takes no more than 6 minutes for them to be overtaken. SCP-973 seems to have no qualms about ramming into the fleeing car, which likely accounts for the extreme damage present on the patrol car. While it is unclear exactly what happens once 973 forces the targeted vehicle to stop, either through their own choice or by being rammed off the road, the results are quite disturbing. The vehicle that fled will later be located somewhere near SCP-973's spawning location, usually within roughly 6 kilometers of the road. Whether the vehicles that are found that far from the road drove there in a panic or were somehow transported there by anomalous means isn't clear. What is clear is that the occupants of the cars met a truly grisly fate. Their bodies will show signs of extreme violence and assault, including evisceration, and some have been so badly maimed and mangled that visual identification was impossible. The vehicles themselves are badly damaged, showing signs of impact from another vehicle, and severe burn damage is often present in the interior. So far, over 34 individuals and 19 vehicles have been designated as victims of SCP-973, though it is likely that the true number is much, much higher. Perhaps most terrifying of all is that some of the victims survived. The Foundation has recovered 5 individuals from sites of SCP-973 attacks, who, in addition to their gruesome physical injuries, also suffer from varying levels of ongoing mental trauma. But why not just destroy the road that SCP-973 appears on, you ask? Well, the Foundation had this same idea, and in 1983, the section of highway affected by SCP-973 was demolished, in an attempt to stop it from manifesting. This attempt failed, though. All this led to was SCP-973 changing its location, where it immediately began engaging in the same deadly behavior. Numerous attempts have also been made to try and capture both 973-1 and -2. In one such event, several teams of SCP Foundation containment specialists were dispatched to its section of highway with the mission to subdue and contain the anomaly. After multiple attempts to get SCP-973 to appear by driving down the highway at various speeds, a car carrying several agents was finally successful, and they spotted the flashing red and blue lights of 973-1 behind them as the message telling them to run began playing over the radio. With no further warnings, the anomalous police car closed in on them, even faster than the agents were expecting, and immediately began ramming into their car. A van filled with additional containment specialists was dispatched to the area to help, and when they reached the area that the GPS tracker on the pursued car led them to, they found that they were too late. SCP-973 had pushed the agent's car far off the road and was ruthlessly tearing their bodies apart. The arriving containment team immediately began firing on 973 in an attempt to save their fellow Foundation agents. The team's weapons appeared to cause some injuries to 973-2, showing that it is perhaps vulnerable to lasting damage just like the 973-1 vehicle is. In a post-mission interview, one of the agents described SCP-973's new appearance. His eyes were red, and his mouth, it was just a black hole. No teeth, no tongue, just a hole. No other reports would come from this incident, though, as this agent was the only survivor. SCP-973 killed the other 9 agents and fled the scene. While it is believed that the Foundation team was able to wound the anomalous creature, it was neither contained nor incapacitated in any real sense, and the next report of a 973 incident occurred just 9 days later. SCP-973's ability to seemingly appear at a new location and the difficulty it has shown in being contained has gotten it a well-earned Euclid classification. The roughly 60 kilometers of highway on which it is known to appear is under satellite surveillance at all times, and all traffic between 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. is diverted along a non-highway detour route, by force if necessary. Unfortunately for the SCP Foundation and the general highway-using populace, these security protocols have necessitated frequent updates, because while the area that SCP-973 engages in its predatory behavior on is well known, both the time of day during which it will appear and the area it seems to affect are expanding.
Warning lights flash, and heavy boots stomp down the sanitized hallways of Site-19. A mobile task force has been dispatched, wielding heavy weaponry and wearing tactical gear. But underneath their jet-black armor, these mobile task operatives are sweating. The SCP thereafter has a very particular set of skills that make them a nightmare to people like this team. Plainly put, anything that the Mobile Task Force can do, the Anomaly can do better, because the anomaly that chose to breach containment is SCP-056, codenamed A Beautiful Person. This shape-shifting being takes the form of a superior version of whatever object or entity it encounters, though typically only by a relatively slim margin. The Foundation has no real way of truly containing SCP-056 because of the unique nature of its anomalous abilities. Instead, their tactic has long been playing to the truly toxic ego of the creature, designing the containment chamber more like a luxury hotel room, perfectly suited to 056's refined taste. However, as a sentient being with a mean streak, keeping an entity like 056 permanently caged is rarely as simple as sprucing up said cage. Some days, like today, 056 will want a change of scenery, and on those days, there's almost nothing the Foundation can do to stop it. As the Mobile Task Forces dispatched to Site-19 scan the halls and spool through security footage, desperately hoping to find some clue as to the vain creature's presence, 056 is actually long gone. Having assumed the form of a handsome, charming scientist after an average-looking scientist with bad social skills walked past its containment chamber, 056 had slipped out of the site undetected before anyone even realized that a breach had occurred. Then, seeing a vulture fly overhead, 056 had taken the form of a bald eagle and flown further, leaving the isolated Site-19 in the dust. 056 is ready and eager for a night on the town, but when 056 decides it's going to paint the town red, it doesn't always mean it in the metaphorical sense. 056 arrives in a small American town, like many that pop up along lonely desert highways. Noticing a plain, unremarkable woman walking past, it immediately transforms into an absolute stunner, with fine diamond jewelry and an expensive-looking red dress. As she walks to a local diner, she turns heads from everyone she passes, doing nothing to hide her conceited smirk.
I really should do this more often, she thinks. When she passes a self-conscious-looking woman with a fake Gucci handbag, 056 suddenly manifests the real deal, brimming with stacks of cash and even more jewelry. Everywhere she goes, her mere presence makes people feel terrible about themselves, and she couldn't be happier. She walks into a local diner where a report on the radio is detailing abandoned, wrecked cars found along the side of a local highway. There were bodies inside in horrific states, so horrific that they couldn't even share the details on the broadcast. But 056 doesn't care about any of that. She simply orders some pancakes in the diner and rudely asks the cashier if he can break a $100 bill. When she receives her pancakes, she takes a single bite before throwing them at the wall and complaining about how terrible they are, then leaving. She takes joy in knowing how awful this will make people feel. On the way out, she decides to take a shortcut down a dark alley, where a woman in expensive clothes, carrying an expensive purse brimming with money, is liable to attract the wrong kind of attention. Two muggers, one armed with a switchblade and the other armed with a gun, emerge from the darkness, wearing malicious grins.
That purse looks a little heavy there, lady,
one of the muggers says.
Yeah, how about you let us carry it for you?
The other adds. 056 smiles and says, Are you sure you have the upper body strength? They don't take kindly to this. As the two muggers prepare to beat this strange woman within an inch of her life and steal all her earthly belongings, she suddenly transforms, shapeshifting into a ripped kung fu master in white robes. Before either of the muggers can respond to this baffling transformation, 056, in his kung fu master form, is beating the living hell out of them and leaving the dastardly duo in a crumpled heap on the ground as he walks away, whistling a merry tune. But making women feel inadequate, insulting small businesses, and beating up petty criminals isn't enough for SCP-056. This thoroughly unpleasant anomaly has the need for speed, and the best way to achieve that need is to obtain a car, or perhaps, even better, become one. Not long after the thought passes his mind, 056 arrives at a parking lot. He looks over the various parked cars, most of which are unremarkable specimens. That is, until he comes across a parked Ferrari and feels his imagination begin to soar with possibilities. A Ferrari? Oh, I can do better than that. In the following moments, SCP-056 flawlessly shapeshifts into a brand new, cherry red Bugatti sports car and starts doing gleeful donuts in the parking lot. 056 then puts the pedal to the metal and speeds out onto the road, where it can pick up some real speed, having no idea that for once it would attract some attention it didn't want. But 056 doesn't care about that yet. It's too focused on breaking its speedometer with sheer insane speed, tearing down the highway at over 100 miles an hour, then building and building and building. 056 is lucky that there are seemingly no other cars on the road tonight, well, except one that it notices far in the distance behind itself. Is that a beat-up old police cruiser? How embarrassing. 056 speeds up even more, hoping to leave the police cruiser as little more than a distant memory. But it doesn't work out that way. Instead, the beat-up police cruiser miles behind 056's sleek supercar begins to build in speed. Little by little, it seems to be doing the impossible, catching up. Being a thoroughly arrogant and unpleasant anomaly, 056 doesn't take the prospect of being humiliated lightly. It decides to take a sharp left turn off of the highway onto a mostly dirty side road, slowing down slightly, as though to challenge the police cruiser to carry on the chase. The police cruiser accepts the challenge and makes the turn after 056 with shocking speed. How is this busted-up old police cruiser keeping pace with a brand new anomalous Bugatti? 056 doesn't understand, but it won't give in. It has to keep believing it's the best, no matter what. 056 tears off down the road until it reaches some dense woods with only a single dirt road cutting through the middle. The Bugatti's wheels kick up mud and dry leaves, its roaring engine sending the animals of the forest scattering in every direction. And still, the police cruiser follows, its high beams cutting through the murky gloom of the forest. Suddenly, it goes from eerie silence, save for the roar of twin engines, to the flashes of red and blue lights and the shrill wail of the police cruiser's siren. 056 finds the whole arrangement laughable. It's escaped the SCP Foundation before. Did some small-town cop really believe he could take 056 down? But what 056 doesn't know is that it isn't being followed by just any small-town cop. It gets a clue to the true horrifying nature of its pursuer when the Bugatti's radio crackles into life, and a single word begins endlessly repeating in a warped, scratchy voice suffused with static. Run, 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 run. 056 is at a loss. This doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be possible for any normal police cruiser to have this effect. Unless... Before 056 can even finish the thought, the police cruiser closes the distance in a single freakish burst of speed. It smashes into the back of the Bugatti and rams it into a brutal tailspin, sending it skidding off the dirt road and crashing into the trees, where it flips twice and comes to rest upside down. Totaled. Its radio still repeats that single warped, ominous word. Run, 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 run. 056 is stunned as it lays, injured and in car form, against the cold and unyielding trees of this dark, isolated forest. How is that even possible? It doesn't make sense. Is this police cruiser some kind of undercover tactical vehicle in league with those worthless worms at the SCP Foundation? The police cruiser has ground to a halt on the dirt road, idling, its lights still cutting through the gloom. The driver's door, marked with the words, "Protect and Serve," slides open, and a shadowy figure steps out. 056 can immediately sense an inhuman presence in its midst. This may look like some doughy, middle-aged cop with a handlebar mustache, but that's just a disguise, and if anyone understands disguises, it's SCP-056. What 056 doesn't know is that the entity about to attack it is, in fact, known to the SCP Foundation, but isn't aligned with them in the slightest. They refer to it as SCP-973, codenamed Smokey, an anomalous police cruiser that contains a terrifying occupant. It's known as one of the more deadly, mysterious, and sadistic creatures that the Foundation still hasn't fully succeeded in containing. Any humans who fall prey to it have a terrifying demise in store for them, but how would an anomaly fare? We're about to find out. Smokey, the nightmarish anomalous police officer, begins walking down the grassy bank towards the overturned Bugatti. His skin is paper pale. His eyes glow a burning brimstone red. He clenches his pale, veiny fists, excited by the thought of the coming violence. This idiot in a sports car really thought it could get away from him? No one gets away from Smokey.
Exit the vehicle, boy,
Smokey says in a crackling southern drawl,
or I'm gonna rip you out of it.
But Smokey doesn't wait for an answer. He charges forward and digs his fingers into the metal of the car, displaying his terrifying superhuman strength. He begins tearing away parts of the car, peeling back panels of metal like a normal person would peel an orange. He imagines the terror of the person within, the sweet fruit under all these layers of obstruction.
Gonna get you, boy,
he repeats, voice almost shaking with excitement.
Gonna get you. Gonna get you. Gonna make you scream. Gonna make you scream like a scared little piggy.
Then suddenly, the car just vanishes. The chunks of metal he's holding are gone. Smokey looks around, baffled. He's done strange and terrible things on these roads, but this is still a new one, even for him. He looks up and stares into the darkness of the forest. The car is nowhere to be seen out there.
Where are you, boy?
Smokey rasps.
You think you can run from me?
Smokey hears a subdued scoff coming from behind the tree in front of him, followed by a tall, dark stranger stepping out into the dim light of the cruiser's high beams. It's SCP-056, but it isn't taking the form of a luxury sports car anymore. Now, it's taking the form of a cinematic legend, Dirty Harry, as played by Clint Eastwood, the ultimate shoot-first, ask-questions-later cop.
You think I'm running from you, punk?
Harry asked.
Truth is, I was sick of looking at that ugly mug of yours. Figured I'd take 5 before I came back and put a bullet through it.
Smokey growls, his jaw unhinging and extending into a horrific black hole.
Not exactly disproving my point there, Slick, Harry chided.
Smokey isn't one for trading barbs. He runs towards Harry with his hands extended, claws growing out of the tips of his fingers. But Harry knows he's dealing with a monster now, and he's ready to fight back. Quicker than Smokey can even notice, Harry reaches into a holster in his coat and pulls out his trademark weapon, a .44 Magnum revolver, one of the most powerful revolvers ever made, and he's a dead shot with it. Harry draws a bead on Smokey and fires a high-powered round through the monster's forehead. Smokey is staggered for a moment, seemingly almost stunned by the shot, but the effects wear off quickly. Smokey roars and swings for Harry, who dodges in the nick of time. Smokey's clawed hand tears through the bark of a nearby tree. 056 buries a moment of quiet anxiety. It thinks,
even for me, this thing is powerful. I need to watch my step. You ought to show me some respect, boy.
Smokey growls.
I'm a man of the law. You have no idea what you're dealing with.
He swings again and again for Harry, forcing him further back into the forest. 056 tries its best to maintain that unflappable Eastwood calm.
Respect is earned, not given, punk,
Harry says, leveling his magnum.
You think you're hot stuff because you torture and terrorize? Putting down scum like you is exactly why I joined the force.
Harry unleashes, emptying the cylinder into Smokey's center mass. Bang, 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 bang. Smokey's body does the bullet dance as Harry's magnum rounds punch into him like hypersonic metal fists. Smokey digs his feet into the ground and steadies himself. Harry reaches into his pocket for some spare rounds, discharges the empty shells from the cylinder, and begins quickly reloading the revolver. Smokey gives him no quarter. The demonic cop charges forward and grabs Harry by the lapels of his suit jacket, lifting him off the ground and slamming his back into a nearby tree. The revolver falls from his hand and clatters to the forest floor. Smokey has the upper hand now. His grip is ironclad. It seems as though 056, even as Dirty Harry, won't be able to escape this one. Smokey presses him against the tree until 056 can feel the bark creaking and his bones beginning to buckle.
Not so talky now, are we, boy?
Smokey snickers.
I'm gonna kill you slow. You're gonna beg for mercy. You're a good fighter,
056 said, beginning to shift.
But I'm better.
Moments later, SCP-056 is no longer Dirty Harry. Now, he's John Wick, the movie super assassin specialized in almost every form of combat. Smokey is briefly confused, and 056 takes advantage of that. With a few expert strikes to Smokey's face, 056 is able to wriggle out of his grip and kick Smokey in the chest, creating some distance between them.
Let's go. It's been too long since I've had a decent workout,
056, as John Wick says. Smokey reaches for John Wick, but John, drawing upon his years of combat experience, blocks Smokey's attack and returns a brutal flurry of blows to Smokey's face and chest. Every time Smokey swings with his supernatural strength, 056 swipes at his arms and uses his momentum against him. While Smokey clearly has the strength advantage by the nature of SCP-056's anomalous ability, this form clearly trounces Smokey in terms of skill. Part of 056 is afraid, having rarely been met with this level of resistance. Another part of 056 is exhilarated. Getting to be better than an entity this formidable is a truly thrilling experience.
You're really starting to get on my nerves, boy,
Smokey says, pulling out a nightstick from his police belt. 056 draws a long titanium combat knife out of his coat.
Prove it,
he says, assuming a knife-fighting stance. Smokey swings for 056 with his nightstick, who blocks it with the edge of his blade. What follows is almost a kind of sword fight, where 056 and Smokey take turns striking and parrying with their respective weapons. 056 cracks his neck, giving a smarmy grin that only irritates Smokey further. The demonic cop throws his nightstick directly at 056's face. The arrogant Anomaly is able to deflect the well-aimed stick with his knife, only to realize that it was just a distraction from the following haymaker. Smokey's fist collides with 056's cheek with the force of a runaway car. It knocks him off his feet, taking his legs out from under him and throwing him to the ground with a mighty thud. And Smokey doesn't let up. He crouches over the stunned 056 and strikes him again and again, pounding his clenched fists into 056's head. If the self-obsessed Anomaly had any chance to speak, it probably would have yelled, "Not the face! Not the face!" Unlucky for 056, mercy is not a word in Smokey's vocabulary. 056 doesn't have time to transform. With every punch, 056's body is pounded deeper into the dirt. He can feel himself losing consciousness under the flurry of blows. For the first time, he's truly terrified about what will happen to him if he passes out. What terrible things will Smokey do to him? Suddenly, floodlights illuminate the forest from every angle. The hum of helicopters sound from far above. Tactical vehicles surround the forest, manned by highly trained, highly armed SCP Foundation mobile task forces. Snipers line up their shots on Smokey, preparing to fire with armor-piercing 50 caliber rounds. Ground troops armed with assault rifles all pour in. As though a magic spell has been cast, Smokey, along with his cursed cruiser, disappears. All that's left is a bruised, bloody, and disoriented SCP-056, still shaking in pain and terror on the ground. It doesn't take long for 056 to be surrounded by Foundation personnel, ready to take it back into containment. To even its own surprise, it's tremendously relieved. 056, whimpering, says,
"I'd like to go back to my room, please."
The group of children on their bikes stare intently at the large, abandoned house. Rumors have been circulating all school year about a monster that lives inside. One child tells the others about the kid from a couple towns over who went inside and never came back out, and it's easy to believe that something evil could be lurking inside the run-down home with its peeling paint and many broken windows. The children begin teasing each other, daring one another to go in and see the monster for themselves. No one seems especially eager to volunteer, though, as they all egg each other on. As the group of children joke about who should be forced to go inside, another comes riding up behind them, struggling to catch his breath. "You left me behind again," he complains. Clearly, this is not the first time that this smallest child of the group has been made to try and keep up with his bigger and faster friends. The bigger kids all turn to look at him. They don't need to discuss it any further. The answer to who must go inside has already been decided. The smaller child tries to protest, but ultimately, what decision does he have but to go inside? He can't let everyone else think that he's a chicken. He's got to prove once and for all that he's just as tough as any of them. Without another word, he lets his bike fall into the dirt and makes his way towards the big, creepy house. The door pushes open without any resistance, and the boy looks into the dark house. The boy steps inside, and the floorboards creak loudly under his feet. The inside looks much like the outside, old, worn, and abandoned. But then, he hears something, a scratching noise coming from above him. He turns to leave, but he can see all of his friends through the doorway, and they motion for him to keep going. The boy steels his nerves and turns back. He's going to show them just how brave he is. The boy starts up the stairs, each one groaning as he steps onto it. He reaches the top of the stairs to find a landing with more rooms, each full of dirt and debris. There's spray paint on many of the walls and lots of trash. It looks like teens may use this as a place to hang out. But there at the other side of the landing is one more room, and the door is shut. From outside, the group of children can see through the upper windows as the boy makes his way through the house. They're not laughing and teasing any longer. In fact, they're impressed by how bravely he is exploring the old home. Though none of them would admit it out loud, he's earning their respect. The boy reaches the shut door at the end of the hall and presses his ear to it, but he doesn't hear anything inside. He places his hand on the doorknob and slowly opens it. The boy screams and falls backwards as the cat that was hiding inside panics and jumps through one of the open windows. The boy can't help but laugh. Of course it was just a... The boy screams again as the floor gives way beneath him, and he crashes down onto the first floor in a pile of debris. He's stunned by the fall before starting to scream again as that floor gives way too. His yelling is silenced by the air being knocked out of him as he hits the basement floor. He's covered in dust and pieces of 2 floors he fell through. He feels bruised and sore, but he can wiggle his fingers and toes. He's not paralyzed, and it doesn't even feel like he's broken a bone. Maybe he's okay. But no, he's definitely not okay. Because suddenly, there's something picking him up off the floor. As his eyes adjust to the dark basement, he sees what it is that's holding him. It's half man, half machine, a huge, disgusting mix of metal and flesh. The boy is too scared to scream anymore as the creature's unmoving, dead-looking eyes stare straight into his. Its face looks as though the skin has been stretched across a human metallic skull. The boy can only watch as the monster raises its sharp, metallic fingers and brushes the dirt out of the boy's hair. The boy starts to whimper, but whatever this thing is, it doesn't seem to want to hurt him. A tinny, robotic voice coming from a small device on the creature's face suddenly breaks the silence. Al anta ala mayuram. The boy doesn't understand, but the robotic man tilts his horrific head to the side and repeats the same thing. The boy is still confused, but he feels like the robot is trying to tell him something. He somehow gets the sense that it's not going to hurt him. Is this the monster that everyone's been afraid of? A misunderstood machine man living down here in the basement? The robot flinches as something is smashed on the back of his head. He tosses the boy to the side and turns to see the boy's friends, each of them armed with pieces of wood and other scraps as weapons. They've come here to save their friend from the monster that they dared him to find. Another runs up to strike the robot, but before he can reach him, he falls to his knees in pain, as do the rest of the children. The creature has begun emitting a high-frequency noise, and the children try to cover their ears. They all feel a searing pain that makes it feel as though their heads will explode. The piercing noise continues to ring out, but the monster looks like it has entered some kind of dormant state and is no longer moving. The small boy is able to slowly get back to his knees, hands still clasped to the side of his head, and stand up. He runs past the monster and his friends who are writhing on the floor in pain, up the stairs and out of the old house. A woman stands at a kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for their dinner that evening, and talking to her oldest daughter about her plans for that weekend when the back door suddenly bursts open. Standing there is her son, the small boy. He's barely able to whisper the words, "Monster. There's a monster in the basement," before he collapses, blood pouring from his ears and nose, before he begins convulsing on the floor. At the local police station, an officer is speaking on the phone. "I see. Yes, that is quite strange. A metal man? You don't say. I'll send someone out there right away. Don't go anywhere." The police officer hangs up the phone and looks around, making sure no one is nearby or listening to him, and then takes out a cell phone. He dials a number from memory, and someone answers on the other end almost immediately. "Yes, this is Field Agent Patch," the police officer says. "You need to get a containment team out here right away, and a good one too. I don't know what it is, but it's dangerous." An SCP Foundation mobile task force that specializes in containing dangerous humanoid threats soon arrived at the house and took the anomaly into captivity. Misinformation teams concocted a cover story about a gas leak leading to the unfortunate deaths of several of the town's children and administering amnestics to any potential witnesses. Once the messy business of containment was over, though, it was time to figure out just what this strange creature was. SCP-203 appears to have at one time been a Caucasian human male, though its appearance now is far different than it once was. This bipedal humanoid creature stands 2.5 meters tall and weighs roughly 200 kilograms. Both its incredible height and weight are due to the fact that the man's original skeleton has been entirely removed and replaced with a mechanical framework made of cast iron. The metal skeleton is much larger than the original bones, and in many places SCP-203's skin has split from being stretched over it, revealing the mechanical structure underneath. Other parts of the framework appear to have been intentionally made to protrude through the skin, though it is unclear for what purpose. In addition to this larger-than-normal mechanical skeleton, a number of other augmentations are present on SCP-203. Its fingers have been extended into sharpened, hook-like barbs that are approximately 1 meter long. Its lips have been removed entirely, making it clear that there is no movable jawbone, and that the skull is likely one large hollow piece of metal, and there are several more hook-like protrusions jutting out around the mouth area, smaller but similar in appearance to the fingers. SCP-203's legs have been modified as well, with 2 added joints that give them an appearance more akin to a dog's, and its toes have been removed and replaced with a solid piece of metal similar to those found in steel-toed boots. Its chest has no sternum or breastplate, which causes the skin stretched across to pull inward as its diaphragm contracts. Its ears have also been removed, though it still seems to possess hearing that is far beyond that of an average human. And while its eyes still remain, they are held in a permanently forward-facing position by several needles that emerge from the eye sockets. The irises also appear permanently dilated and do not react to light. In place of a mouth is a small speaker covered by a metal grate that is capable of producing basic vocalizations, though with a distinctly robotic sound to them. Tests have shown that SCP-203 has a basic understanding of English, but its own primary language seems to be a type of Arabic, though there are no records of the exact dialect. SCP-203 does not need to eat or drink, and without any visible mouth, it is likely incapable of either. Instead, it runs off of a power cell located within its body that will provide energy for up to 72 hours. After those 3 days, SCP-203 will shut down and enter a hibernation state for 3 to 4 hours, during which its power source will recharge, providing it with another 72 hours of energy. All attempts to examine SCP-203 by either X-ray, CT, ultrasound, and other forms of diagnostic imagery have failed, and attempts at exploratory surgery have triggered its defense mechanisms, which are both painful and deadly. When it perceives that it is being threatened in some way, SCP-203 is capable of emitting a high-frequency droning sound that has a profoundly damaging effect on the human nervous system. The effects of this defense mechanism were able to be observed directly when a D-Class personnel accidentally struck SCP-203 and its droning sound was activated. Immediately after being exposed to the sound, D-104 experienced a severe headache. After 15 minutes, the headache grew worse, and D-104 began to bleed from the ears. After a half hour, the D-Class, who had now gone to the infirmary, began to experience seizures and was bleeding from all of his orifices. 10 minutes later, the D-Class was dead. Another test was performed, and the results were nearly identical, with symptoms progressing at roughly the same rate. However, this time, rather than move the D-Class to the infirmary, it was kept in the cell with SCP-203. After 40 minutes, the D-Class was dead, and a few minutes later, 203 finally ceased its droning sound. SCP-203 then approached the body of the deceased D-Class and began to use its own augmentations to start removing the skeleton of the D-Class. While SCP-203 was stopped before it could complete its task, it now appears that the droning sound it produces is a defense mechanism, but may also be a part of the process by which it creates new instances of SCP-203. In interviews with SCP-203, it claims to have no memories of its life prior to its augmentation. It says that it now exists in a near-constant state of pain and confusion, and that the times when its battery is expended and it enters a rest state are its only escape from the pain of its existence. It also claims that it has no memory of what happens once its defense mechanism is activated, nor does it remember what it did to the body of the D-Class that was left in its cell. However, it is unknown just how truthful SCP-203 is being. There has been no way to verify anything that SCP-203 tells researchers, and for the time being, its statements are to be regarded by Foundation staff as an attempt to elicit sympathy or otherwise manipulate them emotionally. It's made several requests for pain-killing medication and anesthetics, but so far, all of these requests have been denied. SCP-203 has been classified as Euclid, and it is kept in a specialized storage bunker at a research site. 2 D-Class personnel equipped with sound filtering equipment guard it at all times, and it is accompanied by an armed escort to any testing or research sessions. Is SCP-203 the ultimate victim? A normal human that was transformed against his will into a crude amalgamation of man and machine? Maybe there is something more to SCP-203, or rather, less. Is SCP-203 fooling all of us? Is this tortured iron soul nothing more than a metallic monster disguising itself with the skin of its last victim? Perhaps with more research, we will one day know the answer. A prisoner in a striped uniform is led down the central corridor of a penitentiary by a pair of guards. Wherever he's being taken, the prisoner is not going peacefully. The other inmates stand at their cell doors watching as he is dragged past them. The prisoner is begging for the guards to show him mercy, pleading for them not to make him go in there, to subject him to anything in the world, but that. The guards pay no attention to his cries as they force him along. They reach the end of the corridor and stop in front of the last cell, number 667. The prisoner looks into the dark, empty cell and screams, struggling against his captors one last time before they overpower him and shove him inside, slamming the door shut behind him. The prisoner looks around the small, dim cell. All that's inside is a bed with a thin mattress and a filthy toilet. He looks extremely scared, his eyes searching around the cell as if a monster is going to leap out from a dark corner and grab him. The prisoner hears a cracking sound and jumps in fright, spinning around to see a different kind of monster. Standing between the 2 guards who led him here is a 3rd prison guard. He's enormous, and the prisoner watches as he cracks the knuckles of his massive hands. The giant guard reaches for something hanging next to the cell door. It's a clipboard. He looks at the prisoner's uniform and notes his name before writing it down. The large guard asks over his shoulder, "So, what are we thinking? 1 day? 2? For this one?" One of the other guards answers, "He deserves a lot more than that for what he did." "Why, what'd he do?" asks the big one. "He attacked one of the nurses. She's in pretty bad shape." One of the nurses? The veins in the larger guard's head start to bulge out as his grip on the pencil tightens. "Who was it?" It was Gloria," the guard answers. The pencil snaps in the giant guard's hand. One of the guards quickly picks it up and hands it back to him. Through gritted teeth, he answers, "I see." As the giant guard stares at him with angry, violent eyes, the prisoner starts to slink back into the dark cell, terrified of what's going to happen to him. "You like to attack nurses, do you? Well, we're gonna give you plenty of time to think about that. I'll see you in a year." The 2 other guards look at each other, clearly thinking that this is extreme even for a crime like this. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" one of them asks. But it's already too late. The guard has penciled in the date for exactly 1 year later. "No, please, no!" the prisoner screams, rushing towards the bars and reaching out as if it will somehow help him. But it doesn't. There's a faint rustling of wind that seems to carry the sound of whispers, and then the prisoner vanishes. He's simply gone, blinked out of existence. The guard hangs the clipboard back on the wall before turning and quickly walking away. He needs to get to the infirmary. The 2 guards can do nothing but shrug at each other and follow after him. "Poor guy," one of them whispers as they walk away from the empty cell. 1 year to the day later, the huge guard walks down the same prison corridor. It's late at night. and as he walks along, he lets his baton hit against the bars of the cells, making a loud clatter.
Wake up, everyone, wake up. It's a homecoming day.
Sleepy prisoners get up out of their beds and stand at the front of their cells, trying their best to look through the bars to see the cell at the end of the block.
See what happens when you mess with staff? Come on, get up, today's the day. It's a homecoming.
The guard gets to the end of the corridor and stops in front of the empty cell with the clipboard hanging on the wall next to it. The door is open, and there's nothing inside the dark cell except for the same dirty toilet and bed. The guard takes out his pocket watch and checks the time. Everyone, the guard and the prisoners alike, are all focused on the empty cell. The guard checks his watch again. The minute hand ticks over to midnight, and the moment it does, the cell door slides shut and locks with a loud click. The prison is completely silent, each inmate waiting with bated breath to see what happens next. The guard takes out a large, heavy ring of keys and inserts one into the cell door before stepping inside. He looks around, and still it appears that nothing inside is different. But then he spots what he's looking for. There in the corner, near the toilet, is a huddled figure in a striped prison uniform.
Well, there you are.
The guard starts to walk towards this person who has somehow appeared in the cell, but the huddled figure doesn't move or react in any way. The guard reaches down and puts a hand on the man to flip him over.
How'd you enjoy your stay?
Solitary confinement is one of the most brutal forms of punishment that is still in use across much of the world today. The psychological and physical distress that comes from days, weeks, months, even sometimes years spent alone can be devastating. But as horrible as this practice is, there exists a form of retribution that is even more terrifying. One that even the most hardened of criminals fear and would do anything to avoid. This is SCP-2701, also known as True Solitary. SCP-2701 is a seemingly standard-looking prison cell located in a now-condemned Pennsylvania State Penitentiary. The prison, which was built in the early mid-1800s, was showing its age long before it was finally shut down, and the cell contains only an old toilet and bed, with a clipboard hanging to the left of the cell with various forms marked as intake. The cell's construction materials appear normal, and the contents themselves are non-anomalous. It is only when someone is placed inside of SCP-2701 and the clipboard next to the cell is used that its frightening effects become evident. When a human being is locked within the cell, their name is written on the intake form and a date is filled in under the Release Date section. SCP-2701's anomalous activation event is put in motion. 13 seconds after these conditions have been met, the person inside will disappear, completely vanishing from view as if they simply no longer exist. Any attempts to better understand the process by which they dematerialize have been unsuccessful, as all recording equipment looking into or placed inside the cell will show only static or blank images during the 13 seconds before the subject disappears. Researchers observing the effect in person, though, have reported the sounds of wind and unidentified whispering voices, but it is still unknown what may be producing these. At 12:00 a.m. on the dot on the release date, the cell's door will somehow close and lock itself if it is not already shut. At this exact moment, the person who vanished will reappear within the locked cell. Unfortunately for the person who was locked inside, while they may have returned to our reality, it is unlikely that they will ever be the same. Experiments into SCP-2701 have revealed that those who are placed inside and vanish will experience a state of complete sensory deprivation while remaining fully conscious the entire time. They experience no sounds, smells, or sense of touching anything. They do not even see darkness, since that would imply sight. Instead, they truly experience no senses at all. This effect can be disastrous for the human psyche, with subjects reporting that they have developed intense fears of both shadows and light, claustrophobia, agoraphobia, and a fear of going to sleep following their time within SCP-2701. At the same time, they will have experienced no physical changes at all, including aging, no matter how much time has passed. But the worst part of SCP-2701 is that those who are locked inside do not experience time at the same rate as you or I. No, tests have revealed that once someone disappears from within the cell, they will feel as if time has been significantly stretched out, with the dilation effect causing them to perceive time at a rate that has been estimated to be between 300 and 400 times longer than normal. That means that someone placed inside for 2 hours will experience time as if they had been locked away for 25 to 33 days, while someone placed inside for a whole year will feel as though they have been floating in a void of nothingness for several centuries. Foundation researchers have theorized that the absence of any outside stimulation for that long of a period causes the mind to break down rational thought structures in an effort to mitigate stress, and that a complete psychological breakdown soon follows. In order to better understand the effects of SCP-2701, the SCP Foundation embarked on a number of tests using Class D personnel. In one experiment, which was performed on a D-Class known as D77391, the event started at 11:45 p.m., and the release date was set for the coming midnight. This led to the D-Class being inside the cell for 15 minutes, though they experienced their time within as having lasted 75 to 100 hours. When D77391 was interviewed 6 hours after reappearing, they described their time inside as being a true hell. Experiencing nothing but emptiness, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't sleep, they couldn't even scream. They were left alone with only their thoughts and memories. The only thing that kept them from completely losing their mind was something one of the researchers told them before they entered the cell. The researcher told them that no matter what they felt, that they had to hold on to the idea that they were going to come back. They needed to remember they wouldn't be in there forever. While these words of encouragement did seem to stave off the worst of the mental effects D77391 could have suffered, they also impacted the results of the experiment, and the offending researcher was later reassigned to a different project, following a 6-month suspension. The SCP Foundation first became aware of SCP-2701 following reports of certain abnormalities at a Pennsylvania state penitentiary. There were numerous complaints by lawyers that they were not being allowed to meet with their clients, and that they were being denied access to the site by the prison's warden. When police were finally dispatched to the site to investigate, it was discovered that the entire prison, which previously housed 137 inmates and employed a number of staff, had only one inhabitant: the warden. He described the activation procedure for cell 667 and explained that he had placed every single prisoner inside one by one and made them disappear. He had been keeping the funds that were supposed to be used for the care of the inmates, as well as to bribe officials and former staff in order to keep the warden's scheme secret and prevent any official inquiries. The warden surrendered to the police without incident, and an undercover Foundation agent within the Philadelphia police soon alerted SCP agents to the cell's anomalous effects. When a Foundation team arrived on site, they found the cell exactly as described, along with the intake forms. The prison warden had been telling the truth. Over 100 forms were filled out with inmates' names, with release dates ranging from 50 to over 1,300 years in the future. The ease with which SCP-2701 is able to be contained has led to it receiving the Safe classification. The former prison where SCP-2701 is located is monitored at all times by video and audio surveillance, and a security guard equipped with full-body restraints is present at all times to both detain any subjects who appear within the cell, as well as prevent any new ones from being placed inside that aren't a part of an official SCP Foundation experiment. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-052, the time-traveling train, for another anomaly with a direct line to the unknown. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.